For over 15 years, Saturdays and Illegal Curve have been synonymous with one another. With insight, analysis, and interviews regarding the Winnipeg Jets, the Manitoba Moose, and all around the NHL, here are Dave Manouk, Ezra Ginsburg, and your host, Drew Mindell. The Illegal Curve Hockey Show, presented by Play Now, the official sports betting partner of the Winnipeg Jets, starts now.
A couple of minutes late, but only because we were having so much fun backstage. The three of us were. I hope you'll forgive us for our mirth and our jolly and our all-around exuberance to say good morning, Winnipeg, good morning, Manitoba. And for all those joining us live this morning on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms, we say good morning, universe, and welcome to a game day edition of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Along with Dave Manouk, along with Ezra Ginsburg, I'm your host, Drew Mindell, here to discuss the Winnipeg Jets for the next couple of hours, getting you game day ready. As I mentioned, the 8-game homestand comes to an end later on tonight. Hockey Day in Canada will feature a one-anthem contest between the Jets and the Calgary Flames. 4-1-2 so far. In the first 7 games of this 8-game homestand, the Jets look to put a cherry on top of it tonight against the Calgary Flames. Gentlemen, great to see you on this Saturday morning. How are things? Everyone looking great in their IC gear, I might say.
Yeah, things are, I can't speak for Dave M, but I think things are pretty good with us, right? The weather outside is not really good. If anybody stepped outside this morning, and it's only going to be getting worse. I think it's going down to like minus 40 on Sunday night or something like that. But obviously, you know, we hope everybody's safe because there were some pretty blizzardy conditions across southwestern Manitoba. Boys, I'm not going to go into a full weather report here, but it's amazing, guys, how as this homestand has progressed, it didn't start off pretty well with losses to Anaheim and Detroit. But as Drew just mentioned, the Jets have an opportunity to go 5-1-2 on this homestand with a win against the Flames tonight, which would obviously mean points in 7 of 8 home games, right? So not bad for the Jets. And, you know, you got to love where the Jets are in the standings. It's going to obviously be a dogfight for the rest of the season because you've got Minnesota, Dallas, and Colorado who are obviously chasing the Jets. But obviously, guys, Dave, when you outscore your opposition 11-2 in 3 games, I think you're doing pretty well.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question, Ezzy, that you're right. This homestand got off to a bit of a rocky start, but it's smooth sailings right now. They've won 3 straight, and they're feeling good. And hey, guess what? Some of their opponents are losing. The Minnesota Wild are slumping a little bit. They've lost a couple. The Colorado Avalanche lost. The Dallas Stars lost. They're still in their last 10. All in that same sort of, I think the Jets have points in 8 of 10, as you just said, Ezzy, and so do the Stars. And I think the Avs have it in 7 of 10. So it's not that they're just falling off, but they did hit a bit of a stumbling block. And things weren't looking good for the Jets in terms of preventing Colorado from catching them because the Avs had 3 goals on 5 shots against the Oilers the other night, but ultimately lost 4-3. So Edmonton did Winnipeg a favor by defeating the Avs. And look, this is a Jets team that is getting healthier again. And we are about to see them for the first time this season, as Scott Arniel told us, I want to say not yesterday, because we heard from Marty Johnson yesterday, not Scott Arniel, but 2 days ago, then I guess it would have been in his availability.
Is that like Assistant Coach Friday? Like, is that a new thing that the Jets are starting, by the way?
No, it's not specific to
Davis Payne earlier this week, right? With the when they talked about the power play being recession proof.
Yeah. Oh man, he gave us like an economics lesson. He was like, "Well, is it top up, bottom down?" And we're like, I'm not sure. And then he said recession proof. I'm like, okay, I think he must be an economics major in some capacity, but.
Talking to the dullards in the media about anything beyond what's going on the ice. You better bring out the sock puppets.
I'm going to tinker with your ticker. So I think it was one of
What did you learn about hyperinflation, Dave?
Quite a bit. I don't understand any of it, but quite a bit. So no, I mean, it's just as, it's like anything, like giving a coach a day off and giving giving a player a day off. Coaches take days off from speaking with us as much as I think that speaking with us is great. Sometimes they want a night away or a game away or a day away, I should say. So, we had Marty Johnson yesterday. We had, as Drew said, Davis Payne earlier this week. Good interviews, both of those, of course, on the Illegal Curve YouTube channel, the one place you're going to find every single interview for the most part, unless I'm not there. Then you don't find them. But
When
otherwise,
you're going to be there. Who said you're allowed a day off? That's
well, I'm
not
going to ask.
allowed.
I'm going to make sure Connor Harabchak, who's joining Ezzy tonight on the post game show,
Yes.
is if he's at the optional this morning, that he can do it. But my point I'm making is that this Jets team is getting healthy for the first time in some time, and we saw Mason Appleton and Vlad Nemesnikov both skating yesterday with there were only 7 guys on the ice. So we saw those two. We saw Hayden Fleury and Colin Miller. We spoke to Colin Miller, Ezzy, about his fractured larynx, and he was not Dave Manson-esque for those who were curious. He said his voice was good. He was cheering guys up. And Marty Johnson said some interesting stuff about Colin Miller. It was almost Nate Schmidt-esque how he described the importance of the Jets' third pairing defenseman, his attitude, how he kind of lightens the mood around the room, and just the kind of intangibles, in addition to being a solid third pairing defenseman, but the intangibles he brings to this team. And I just thought that was kind of interesting insight from Marty yesterday. And again, this is, I think the point I'm trying to get to eventually, as I ramble a little bit, is that there are, in fact, 8 defensemen available. Ville Heinola skated yesterday. Logan Stanley did not. Of course, makes you think that at least maybe Ville Heinola is not going to take the option today and not going to be in the lineup. Whether it's Hayden Fleury, Colin Miller, whether it's both, there was no indication from the coaching staff. So right now it's up in the air as to what the third pairing will look like. Other than that, I think, and whether Eric Comrie starts versus Connor Hellebuck, but other than that, it seemed pretty, business as usual this week.
Well, you talk about we'll get into the defense coming up here in a second. At the end of Kenny Weeb's article, which I believe is available on illegalcurve.com, he makes mention and says, don't be surprised if it is Eric Comrie tonight for the Calgary Flames. So I think the tea leaves are
the Calgary Flames or against the Calgary Flames?
Against the Calgary Flames. Sorry, that's what I meant. But
did Eric get claimed on waivers again?
Yeah, that's right. So you can probably read the tea leaves a little bit there, that if Kenny's alluding to that, he's usually fairly dialed in as to who the goaltender is going to be. So likely Eric Comrie, but any news on that front we'll bring to you over the next couple of hours here.
Which is a little bit of a surprise, right? Like it's not a huge surprise, but we talked about it, Drew. The Jets don't have any back-to-backs before the break coming up in February, right? So you knew that Eric Comrie, like I think when we were doing our analysis, when we were trying to predict how many games Hellebuck was going to get, if I'm not mistaken, we predicted that he might get one of those Utah games. So obviously this isn't, I mean, it shouldn't be an absolute shock. He's obviously not going to go, silent, or he's not going to sit on the bench for the next 3 weeks, but it's a little bit of a surprise, especially with the way Hellebuck's been playing lately.
I would have thought maybe Seattle would have been an option for him. But look, I mean, like you said, Ezzy, you're going to have to find a game to get him in when there's no obvious candidates.
Right.
So whether it's, whether it's the Seattle game that just happened, which obviously it wasn't, or if it's tonight, or if it's Monday against the Utah hockey clubs, clearly you need to find a game for Eric Comrie, and the Jets are doing that. Potentially at least doing that with the asterisk next to it for tonight's game. Let me go back to the defense though, Dave, because for the first time in a long while now, the Jets defense is fully healthy. We know Dylan Coghlan was loaned back to the Manitoba Moose because he didn't need to clear waivers. So, that's why the terminology is a little bit different in that sense. He's back with the Moose. So the Jets have 8 healthy defensemen up with the big club. Do you think it was a bit of a tell? A poker tell that they spoke that Colin Miller was made available to the media yesterday prior to today's game, or do you think just because of it was such an sort of a unique injury situation that they wanted to get him in front of media to discuss it, and it's not a tell that he's going to be back in the lineup on the right side for the Jets tonight?
Oh, you're going back to me? Okay. I think it's interesting because you're right. Generally speaking, we don't speak to players. But it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going into the lineup. And he, again, not that they usually tip their hand to us, but he didn't. I shouldn't say that. Sometimes Ehlers tends to tip his hand and tell us
you a
what
little
he's
smirk a little bit.
Yeah, he'll usually just kind of say it out explicitly. But I think I don't know that it's necessarily a tell that Colin Miller is coming back in. I think both he and Hayden Fleury are ready to go, as evidenced by the fact that they both ditched their non-contact uniforms this week. Hayden Fleury ditched his on Monday. And Colin Miller
and Dave, sorry to cut you off here for a second, but also that Dylan Coghlan was sent back to the Moose.
Yeah.
Right? Because the Jets don't have an extra defenseman available if Fleury and or Miller aren't coming back, right? So that's a significant move.
Oh, for sure. No, there's no question about it. And remember, they're doing that because they want to preserve his waiver status. And so that makes a lot of sense. And yeah, Fleury, like I said, ditched his non-contact on Monday, and Colin Miller ditched his yesterday. Now, again, of course, yesterday was an optional, so it's not that like Appleton and Nemesnikov weren't in non-contact. I suspect today at the optional, because almost all the guys who weren't skating yesterday will be skating today. If those guys are skating with them, they'll be in non-contact. They may not skate with them. We'll find out in about 20 minutes with regards to that. But no, I don't know, Drew. That's why, like I said, to me, it's an asterisk. I suspect Marty Johnson was asked whether it would be one or two, whether the team would be comfortable putting in both guys. That's why I do think it's possible they do a full swap, and you do Miller and Fleury, because they both seem to be ready to go. Or potentially,
let me stop you there for a second then. So you talk about, both those guys have been off the ice for a decent period of time. Do you expect the Jets to put both back in the lineup on the same game, which to me would be, not that's risky, because I mean, it's not.
These are veteran defensemen, Drew. These
right,
are not,
but
these are not
putting two guys back in the lineup who would be playing partners together is probably not something that you would typically see a wholesale swap for on a third pair. When with both guys returning from injury, you may have some, not concerns, but some, pause regarding their conditioning a little bit. To me, that would be, I don't expect that to happen tonight. Is my sort of take on that.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. And I'll get Ez here in his thoughts. But I mean, to me, I just look at it as there's a good chance one, if not both, are in. But like, I'm with Ez, they're both veterans, and it's not like obviously Hayden Fleury has been out since December 26th, that Toronto game, and but Colin Miller, of course, has missed a lot less time, and so. Like I said, I think they want to get someone in on that right side. So maybe it is Miller, Ezzy, because really it wasn't so much his conditioning. It was really just he couldn't afford to get a shot to the neck. But he's got protection now. He said that he's wearing something that'll give him a little more protection.
Yeah, that's a good point, Dave. And I think that, I'm leaning towards Stanley and Miller as the third pair today and tonight against the Flames. But I think it's just a matter of time, obviously, guys, before Hayden Fleury's back in the lineup. I think ultimately, the discussion has to turn to, who's your best option right now in the third pair, guys. And I don't think Ville Heinola should be playing on the right side of the third pair. And I just don't. I think Stanley and Heinola, despite the fact that the Jets have won 3 games in a row, that pair to me has looked shaky. Like I think at times you just see the indecisiveness from Heinola. Obviously, we talked about Logan Stanley's penalty that cost Connor Hellebuck the shutout in the game against the Vancouver Canucks, right? But yeah. I just think that, right now, and I don't speak for you guys, but I think that right now your best option is to have those veteran defensemen, Hayden Fleury and Colin Miller, on the third pair. So whether or not we see it tonight, guys, versus the Calgary Flames, I think that's where we're headed. And it's not ideal to have Ville Heinola, as your 7th defenseman not playing games, right, Dave? We've talked about it. It's and look, it's not always an ideal situation. It's a good problem to have that you have your 2 veteran defensemen coming back healthy. But then it leaves a situation where is now Ville Heinola your 8th defenseman? We've seen the Jets' usage of Logan Stanley, right? Heinola playing on his offside. So that probably means that Heinola is going to be buried even more. And again, I know there's a lot of Jets fans out there that are talking about, Heinola, could he be a guy that's moved in a possible trade? Of course, it's always possible, but I'm just saying that, with Miller and Fleury coming back, that's just going to further reduce. Like, I don't think, guys, there's going to be like a 3-man rotation on the left side. Like, I don't think the Jets are going to play, they're not going to have Hayden Fleury 1 game, Logan Stanley 1 game, Heinola. Like, eventually they're going to choose their guy. And based on how he's performed this year, I think Hayden Fleury is a better option than Logan Stanley.
I think you might have, it wouldn't surprise me for the next 3 weeks if you have a little bit of a rotation leading up until the 4 Nations break. And then after the 4 Nations break, I think it's pretty much go time for a lot of these teams. At that point in time, you're into the far back half of the year. You're down to probably maybe 20, 25 games left. You're trying to fine tune everything. You're trying to optimize your lineups for the playoffs at that point. So I could see a bit of a rotation for the next couple of weeks just because you're leading into that break. But then after that, I do think it's time to start sort of narrowing your focus and beginning to really build everything leading into the playoffs. You talk about the numbers, the raw. I mean, Colin Miller and Hayden Fleury together have played 104 minutes. They've got a positive Corsi for at 55%, a positive expected goals for at just over 50%. So for a third pairing, that line, which is played...
Yeah, that's fine.
That's fine. You'll take that. You'll take positive possession, positive goals for. You got no problems there. Miller and Heinola have played a little less together, about 40 minutes less than Miller and Fleury. But Miller and Heinola have played 62 minutes together. They have a Corsi for 53.4%. Again, positive possession. An expected goals for a little less than 50%. So, and I'm going to look up here the Miller and Logan Stanley here in a second. So give me a break. Here it is. So Miller and Logan Stanley, they've played 173 minutes together.
So the most.
The most. They have a possession number of 46%. Corsi for. So you can see that the best results have come from Fleury and Miller together.
Yep.
The second best have come from Heinola and Miller together, and then bringing up the rear has been Stanley and Miller together. I mean, I'm not even going to look at...
Well, Stanley Heinola has been even worse.
Well, I'm not even going to look at that because I don't think that's really a possibility. Yeah, I mean, you talk about it there. 40.
It's not a You're right, Drew. There's no point in even wasting our viewers' time discussing that because that is not going to be the Jets' third pairing when the playoff time comes around.
It will not be.
No, Colin Miller's an important piece, guys. I think ultimately, we talked about it, right? Like when he was acquired from the Devils by the Jets, he didn't play a lot.
No, and now what we error by Rick Bowness at the time, and since then has been validated.
I would agree with that, Drew. And I think that even though Hayden Fleury's been a journeyman defenseman, I think Hayden Fleury, we've seen him struggle in a second pairing role. But when Hayden Fleury's playing 12 to 15 minutes on the third pair, him and Miller are very dependable. You're not going to get a crazy amount of offense. Obviously, Colin Miller has the booming shot, and he can provide a little bit of offense. But obviously, from Hayden Fleury, you're not expecting a lot of offense. You're just hoping that he's managing his minutes well and he's moving the puck well out of the zone, taking care of business. He's a big body, right? He can take care of his own net. So I think this is all positive, right, guys? Like, the Jets right now are getting healthier, and Nemesnikov and Appleton, they're close. I think, Drew, we're going to get into that a little bit later, but I think that's going to be really interesting to see what happens when Mason Appleton comes back, because with the way the second and third lines are currently configured, guys, they're both playing well, right? And, Alex Iafallo, obviously not a guy that you expected to be in the top six, but they found something there with Lowry, Ehlers, and Iafallo, that's for sure.
Yeah, there's no question about it. We'll delve deeper into the forward lines a little bit as the show goes on. Not a possibility. We're not expecting the Nemesnikov and Appleton. Are we even expecting them on the road trip? I don't think so, Dave.
No. Both Arneal and Marty said that there are possibilities for the road.
Okay, so possibilities for the road trip. So, but of course, after the game Monday in Utah and then Wednesday in Colorado, the Jets return home. They face they face Utah again next Friday, and then the Flames on Sunday. So, sort of a unique schedule right now in that all of these teams, the Jets have played very recently. They'll play twice against Utah in the span of 5 days. They'll face Colorado 3 times in the span of about 3 weeks.
The next 5 games are a palindrome.
Yeah. Well, is that why they did that?
Yeah.
That's why they did that. I was trying to figure it out yesterday.
Yeah, because Drew, you've got Calgary tonight. Then you've got Utah, then you've got Colorado, and then you've got Utah, and then Calgary. So it's the same backwards.
That was okay. It took me a minute or more than a minute to figure out.
Come on, Drew, get out of your kayak.
I'm like, Drew, technically, if you didn't figure it out till now, it's a few more minutes than
Get out of your race car, Drew.
I asked Laura, was there a meme going around online about palindromes that I missed out on to try and explain why the Jets, for those who don't know what we're talking about, the Jets social media team had a little bit of fun with palindromes and the Jets schedule last night or yesterday on Twitter, on X. And
Jeremy's Iron.
Yeah. Well, my favorite one is go hang a salami. I'm a lasagna hog. That's my favorite palindrome of all time.
It's a good one.
We've digressed as
my 2 favorite foods right there, Drew. So it's in a palindrome.
Have you ever put salami in a lasagna?
I have not done that, but I might.
Now I've tweaked your interest there. I can tell. As he might go leave the show, he might go start making up his salami lasagna right now instead of finishing off the broadcast.
Yeah, usually use ground beef, but I think salami might add maybe get me a heart attack quicker.
That's right. We don't have enough cured meats in your diet, so we're gonna have to step those up a little bit in any event as we move along. But so the defense is something certainly to keep an eye on. Now that they're healthy, the forward group, of course, we'll discuss a little bit later. But it does seem, I mean, I circle this back to Murat's article, in the Athletic earlier this week, talking about the perfect Jets deadline acquisition, and of course the name that everyone would always be interested in is Mackenzie Weegar. People.
How long have we been talking about Mackenzie Weegar?
Forever, and it's not going to happen. So I think we can probably sort of forget about him specifically.
Well,
but the more
that's exactly what the Jets need. If there's one, if like we're talking about like your ultimate Christmas list, like if you're a kid, right, like and you're asking for like a surfboard, or maybe back in our days, I'm dating myself a little bit, but here, like if you have Super Nintendo on your wish list, like Mackenzie Weegar would be Super Nintendo.
Yes, it certainly would be a huge addition for the Winnipeg Jets, but again, it's not unlikely to happen. Calgary is still, sniffing the playoffs. They're, in fact, I believe, in the final wild card spot.
Yeah, they're in the final one. Yeah, but they've got a point up on Vancouver.
And 1 point up on the Blues, but the Flames and the Canucks have 2 games in hand on the Blues. So again, it's a bit of a turtle race at the bottom of the wild card standings in both conferences. But I mean, again, if Colin Miller is there, I just don't know that the right side is, especially with Dylan Samberg and what he does for Neil Pionk and how he stabilizes Neil Pionk.
Mm-hmm.
I can't help but think that the left side might be, sort of more of your pressing issue a little bit, rather than going with, a journeyman in Hayden Fleury or the untested rookie in Ville Heinola. I have, if you go, you sort of got the dependables on your left and the unsung heroes on the right. I don't know. It's just, if you go for a right side addition, I don't know how that necessarily shores up your questioning on your left side.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a good point. And, I've mentioned a couple guys, like, again, I'll just throw out some names, like Mario Ferrero is a guy that I like on the San Jose Sharks. I'm not saying, guys, that the Jets are going to trade for this guy. I'm just saying that, like, defensemen like that, that's a guy, Brian Dumoulin on the Anaheim Ducks, like, obviously has the Stanley Cup pedigree, right? Like, these are guys that I think would be an upgrade over Hayden Fleury, but it depends also, guys, if the Jets are going big game hunting. Like we say, Mackenzie Weegar is not going to happen. Marcus Pettersson is another guy. I was watching the Flames, the Penguins last night. By the way, Rickard Rakell is having an amazing season, up to 23 goals on the season. Just wanted to mention that. And Sidney Crosby.
Alex Nedeljkovic. You got to get Nedeljkovic as the sniper.
Not only did I was going to mention that, I didn't want to make this Penguins lunch, Dave. But not only did Nedeljkovic have a goal, he had an assist. Yeah. It was the first multi-point game from a goalie since Tom Barrasso. So how about that for a old school reference?
But just to finish that off, as he has a goal in the ECHL in like 2016. He has 2 goals in the AHL, one in 2018, one in 2023, and now he's got an NHL goal. Like, it's actually, he's got more goals than Chris Thorburn had, I think.
I don't care what anybody says. Like, I instantly become a little kid. Like when there's a goalie goal. Like nobody's going to tell me differently. Like, goalie goals are always cool. I don't care if it's the NHL or the KHL. I just think it's something that it's rare anyways. But yeah, like Mark.
One last thing about Nedeljkovic, the first goalie in NHL history to have a goal and an assist. So there's been some goalies who've had multiple point games, as you mentioned, as Tom Barrasso there, but the first goalie in NHL history to have a goal and an assist in the same game.
Yes. Yeah. No, it's a good point. And
I also think briefly, to have a goalie get as many points as you get goals in a game has to be rock bottom for the Buffalo Sabres, doesn't it?
But the Sabres also outshot the Penguins like 42-19.
Well, yeah,
like he was just good at net.
Sometimes he was. But I can scroll. I can see the Penguins in the standings, and then I'll keep scrolling down.
Although I feel again, I don't pay attention to the Sabres particularly, but I'm pretty sure the Sabres have been playing better of late. I know they knocked off.
They're dead last in the Eastern Conference.
No, I know, but I feel like I understand that they're dead last year. I'm not saying otherwise, but I'm just saying I feel like they won a few games they beat 1 or 2. I think did they beat Vegas?
Yes.
And they beat someone who was good. So
Yeah, the problem with the Sabres is it's like they win 2 in a row and then they lose 4 in a row, right? Like that's the issue. And I also think I just want to just mention this. It's also funny that Tom Barrasso played for Buffalo and Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that's kind of funny. But Marcus Pettersson, we had the comment on Harjavan. I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. But I was watching Marcus Pettersson. I was doing a little scouting for Illegal Curve last night. And Marcus Pettersson, I mean, he really would be a great acquisition for the Jets, right? He can play on the left side. He can play on the right side. He's a big guy, but he's also very mobile, very solid defensively. His analytics, his expected goals against are it's really solid numbers. I can't give you exact numbers right here. I'd have to pull it up. But yes, Marcus Pettersson, I think that's what's going to happen, boys. I realize we're going to be talking about this a lot for the next 4 or 5 weeks leading up to the trade deadline, or 6 weeks, whatever it is. But yeah, I think the Jets are definitely, it seems like, are in the market for a defenseman. And, who knows? Maybe there are some bigger guys, bigger names out there that we haven't talked about. Look, back in 2018, nobody expected it to be Paul Stastny, right? So it's very possible it's going to be a guy that we haven't talked about that the Jets are acquiring.
And we'll talk more about the trade deadline and the forward group and the defense throughout the course of the show, because, remember, if I just, before we go to break, we're going to bring in the Christian Amell from CJOB to join us for further Jets talk. But you remember last year when they acquired Sean Monahan, they brought him in to shore up the power play. Where was going to be his big asset was on the power play. Mm-hmm. Well, that's not a factor for the Jets to have to consider anymore, given how great their power play has been, top of the league. By the way, Flames, I believe they have the 30th ranked penalty kill entering tonight's game. So note to Calgary, don't take very many minor penalties or major penalties for that matter.
No, the other thing, Drew, is they take the second, I looked this up, they take the second most penalties in the NHL. You've got guys like Rasmus Anderson, Nazem Kadri has 42 penalty minutes. Martin Pospisil has 66 penalty minutes this year. He's putting up those old school penalty minute numbers. So not only do the Flames not have a good penalty kill, they take a lot of penalties. So obviously that's something that we're going to be keeping an eye on. If the Jets, that power play that's been 50%, Dave, the last 4 games, I wouldn't be surprised. Let's just say I'm going to do a Ginsburg guarantee here.
No.
Jets score a power play goal tonight.
Okay, well, I'll give you a less Ginsburg-y guarantee, but I will tell you some insight right now from Morning Skate. The Connor Hellebuck starting routine is underway as per Mitchell Clinton. Yeah. So Kenny's little prediction.
Hey, they did that last week, though, and they threw a curveball.
Let me finish. Unless there's a Philly fake out, Philly Dan fake out, I should say, then I suspect it might be Connor Hellebuck, but we shall see what Scott O'Neill says in approximately 1 hour.
What happens if they leave the ice at the exact same minute and exact same second? What then? Chaos. Dogs loving cats. Cats loving dogs.
Us loving each other.
Salami and lasagnas. It's all going to be chaos.
Just don't F with cats, Drew.
Exactly right. Saturday morning edition of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. It's presented by Play Now. Christian Amell from 680 CJOB. When we come back, don't go anywhere. Welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, Saturday morning, bottom of hour number 1. We're pleased to be presented by our friends at Play Now. Sign up for Play Now and get a casino welcome bonus up to $150. Play Now is Manitoba's local, legal, and secure gambling site and the official betting partner of the Winnipeg Jets. Conditions apply. 18 plus. Enjoy responsibly. Enjoy our next guest responsibly from 680 CJOB. Christian Amell joins us on the show. Okay, what's the jersey today, Christian? Show it off.
We got the Owen Sound Platers throwback jersey. I'm from the Owen Sound area, so the Attack is the team I grew up watching. And one year they put out a Platers throwback, and I'm like, I need to buy that. So I did.
That is sweet.
And here it is.
I love that.
Yeah.
So the Platers obviously predate the Attack?
Yeah, so originally if you ever go to a junior hockey's team's Wikipedia page, there's like 9 different iterations before they get to their current team. They were the Guelph Platers at one point. I'm sure there's some kind of industry like steel thing. Why I never actually looked into it. And then they were Owen Sound Platers till 2000. They almost left. There was a community effort to save the team. They did so, and then they renamed them the Attack, which is the rare hockey or sports team name with no S at the end. Mm-hmm. And their mascot is a bear because bears attack. It's not the best nickname. It's not the best logo, but this is so clean, right? So I'm like, that looks great. So I'm wearing this because it's a hockey show, and I should wear a hockey jersey that has nothing to do with the NHL. So that's what
We
we're
love
doing
it.
today.
Beautiful. I love the logic. I love the thinking. I love the jersey. Christian from 680 CJOB. Good morning again. Here to talk about the Winnipeg Jets, the end of the 8-game homestand later tonight against the Calgary Flames. You know, we were talking about the defense for a lot of the first 30 minutes of the show as the team is getting healthy on the back end. And, you know, Hayden Fleury and Colin Miller seem as though they're options for the Jets moving forward. You know, forgetting about the top four, right now, you know, who is your ideal third pairing for the Winnipeg Jets? Let's say for, you know, the next couple of weeks at the very least, leading up into the Four Nations tournament.
I think whatever the answer is has to have Colin Miller on the right side. I think you look at any iteration of the third pair that they've had this year, whether it's Pion or whether it's Fleury or Stanley or Heinola on the left side, the best combinations all have Miller on the right side. So I think statistically there hasn't been a whole lot of difference between Stanley and Heinola and Fleury on that left side role. I mean, you can look at expected goals or Corsi data on Money Puck, and there's not a giant separation between the three, but the key has been Miller has been the boat that floats all the other guys on the left side. So personally, I mean, I've made it clear I like Heinola, but I honestly think if you want competency and consistency, the answer might actually be Fleury on that left side, at least for now. I mean, I think we know what we're getting with Logan Stanley, who actually has been pretty good with Colin Miller in their time together. And Heinola, like he's only played like 60 games in the NHL, so he definitely needs time and confidence. I'd like to see him play with Miller. I've said this before, for like 10 straight games. Let's just see what he looks like for 10 straight games of the NHL. Give him a sample size and some data. But I think there really isn't a wrong answer on the left side so long as Miller is on the right side. And I'm just not confident that that's going to happen because we've seen this season there's been a lot of in and out for all those guys on the third pair. And I'm not sure they're going to do it, even though I think they should.
No, fair enough. And Christian, I want to get away from the defenseman. I enjoy talking.
What else
about,
is there to talk about?
Exactly. I mean, I know that Hayden Fleury and Colin Miller are coming back into the lineup. It might be as soon as tonight against the Flames, but I want to talk about goals, and I want to talk about Mark Scheifele, who's second in the NHL in goals right now with 27. The only man who has more goals than him is Leon Draisaitl, and obviously, being someone who was hoping to make Team Canada, Scheifele was disappointed by that. But we got to talk about just his goal scoring prowess. He's on pace for a career year. He might go 50-50 this year. That's a possibility. You've covered this team for a long time. What are you seeing different from Mark Scheifele, in addition to the fact that obviously, you know, there was a burr under his saddle from not making Team Canada?
I think, first of all, the power play being as effective as it is a big boost for all the scorers on the Winnipeg Jets. It's not to say that Scheifele's done all his scoring on the power play. He's got 7 on the power play and 20 that aren't on the power play. So, I mean, he's been exceptional up front this year. Healthy is a big part of it. And I think motivated too, right? I think pro athletes are some of the more motivated people you'll ever see, right? I need a lot for me to really try hard at a lot of things because what's the incentive there? I go to the gym, I work out. It's like, yeah, cool. What am I training to be, right? I want to get to like break 80 on the golf course. Like that's not the biggest deal.
Christian, I think we need to start
working. Front 9 or back 9?
Well, someday, hopefully, by the time we get to the clubhouse. But the reality of pro athletes is they don't usually need much to get them going. And I really think going into the season, the Four Nations was an interesting carrot for a lot of these top-end players to try and get on that because Mark Scheifele just hasn't really played. Most of these guys haven't played best-on-best hockey before, right? The World Cup was 9 years ago now, and some of them were on Team North America, but then wearing Team Canada's jersey is a whole other thing, right? Representing your own country and not this fake Team North America, as cool as that actually was. But now you add in the fact that he doesn't get on the team. And I think there's an element of FU to this for Mark Scheifele and the way he's been playing the last month too. Just saying, you guys thought you could play without me, huh? And I think that's part of what's been driving him. But I really also think that it's not just him, right? That top line of Scheifele, Connor Velarde, a lot of it's based on the power play, but even strength too. They've had a lot of good nights that they've been able to put up a lot of points because they no trio has played more together this year than those guys. And I think familiarity has been a huge part of their success. Last year, that top line, Velarde got hurt so early in the season. He comes back. Connor immediately gets hurt. So half the season, basically, they didn't play together, or they were playing, but someone wasn't healthy completely. So the fact that they've been all there, healthy together, has really lifted their game. I think they've also stepped up defensively. There have been nights like their last game where they, analytically they got crushed. But more often than not, those aren't happening as much as they used to. So Scheifele coming into his prime here in his early 30s, motivated. And I do believe that not getting on that team has definitely lit a fire under him. He was already putting up good numbers before that, but lately, for sure, in the last month, I think he's been on a tear. So fun to see if you're a Jets fan, but also if he's not playing in the Four Nations face-off, it's a bummer for him. But if you're a Jets fan, it's like, well, you know what? That means he's going to be nice and rested for the home stretch. So,
And Christian, just wanted to say one thing before Dave M gets in here with his question. I mean, there could be an injury, right? And
Sure.
You'd have to think that if there is an injury, you'd have to think that if he's not number one on the list, he's got to be number two on the list. But I bet he's number one on the list.
Because I remember when the team was made, and the thought was, okay, you can't just have like 12 first liners on a team because you need some of the role guys. And then we saw the World Juniors, where Canada tried that and couldn't score. Because it's easier for a star guy to grind than a grind guy to score a lot of goals. So I'm interested to see if that World Junior experience informs them at all when it comes to this. Now, it's not IIHF, it's not Hockey Canada, right? So it's a little bit different in that regard. But yeah, I mean, he's put up incredible numbers. It depends on who gets hurt, I guess.
But Rob Zamler back on the team, nothing can go wrong when that happens.
Is Christian, are you old enough to remember Rob Zamler? I don't know if Christian's old enough to
the name rings a bell. I think I've heard about the lore of it. I'm 30. I turned 33 this year, so I think it's a tiny bit before my time. But I also want to. But we just heard yesterday. Don Sweeney's like, yeah, I wish we could have picked the goalies later. Okay, so I mean, he might have regrets about not just the goalies. It might be about some of the other players too.
Yeah. I think you're talking about Logan Thompson there, right?
Yeah, I mean Thompson, Kemper, Blackwood, Skinner are all putting up better numbers than the three goalies that are on the team. So,
well, I think they did that for marketing purposes. The only problem is marketing doesn't look like it's doing so well right now, based on how slow the ticket sales are. What a surprise! A crap tournament in the middle of the NHL season isn't exciting fans the way the Olympics do. Anyways, let's move on to keep things focused here with the Winnipeg Jets. And, Christian, I'm curious as to your thoughts. We've now had, with Vlad Nemestikov out after he blocked that shot in the game against the Kings, we've had a new 2C to watch here in Winnipeg. What are your thoughts on Adam Lowry with Nikolai Ehlers and Alex Iafallo? How do you like that line's configuration?
I like it so far. I think, first of all, it's all about Ehlers for me, because he is a dynamic player. We've seen how he's been unlocked on the power play and still not getting a ton of 5-on-5 minutes. But the way he's playing with Lowry compared to the way he was playing with Nemestikov, there feels like a slight degree of unshackling for his play, because Nemestikov, good player, versatile player, not a second line center on a Stanley Cup contender. And exactly. I've thought that from the start and knew that this is going to work for a bit, but at some point they're going to have to do something else. And I'm not sure Adam Lowry's the answer to that personally. I don't know if he can, in a deep playoff run, do enough offensively to be a 2C, but positionally, puck battling wise, hockey IQ wise, I think he's a player that more fits Nikolai Ehlers, and Alex Iafallo is another just professional hockey player, right? Who has some offensive upside, but generally is kind of like Nemesnikov, just with maybe a touch more offensive upside in terms of his hockey smarts. But I just think Ehlers has more room to work with. I think he's got, Lowry just seems to work better with Ehlers in terms of the spacing on the ice and getting the puck to Ehlers. Neither Nemestikov nor Lowry has a ton of finishing to their game. I mean, we see Lowry get shorthanded breakaways all the time, and honestly, when he gets them, I'm like, I don't think he's going to score here, and he doesn't usually. But
and he's going to that backhand move every single time.
Yeah. I mean, he's a very good hockey player, and he scores in bunches, but generally, he's more what he does not on the score sheet, right? Mm-hmm. But I think the space that's been opened up for Ehlers, I think, has been something that the team has taken note of, right? And sometimes during injuries, you end up looking at stuff that you're not expecting. And so far, this has been great. Does this mean they don't have to go acquire a second line center? I don't think that's the case. I still think they should do that, because I think the trickle down is when Appleton and Nemesnikov get healthy, you have Ehlers insert dude here, and then Perfetti, they still want to have on that right side. You go back to Lowry, Niederreiter, and honestly, I like better than Appleton on that third line. And then you put Nemesnikov, Appleton, and maybe Barron together on a fourth line. And I think that team looks pretty good.
Christian Amell, our guest Saturday morning here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Drew Mandel, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg with you after the game tonight, the Illegal Curve post-game show back here on our YouTube channel. Christian, we were talking about this more last week than this week. The Jets have played 46 games. Connor Hellebuyck has started 36 of those 46. The Jets have 2 back-to-backs remaining in this season. How many of the final 36 games does Connor Hellebuyck get for the Winnipeg Jets?
Well, I haven't done the full schedule calculus here, so I'm just going to go off the dome. But I think that it's conditional. I don't think you can say right now what it's going to be. I think it depends on the situation of where they are in the standings. But I also wonder about the impact of the Four Nations faceoff, because he's going to be Team USA's guy, and that's going to be a few extra games for him of a decently high intensity. So I think coming out of that, you're maybe going to want to spread out his minutes a little bit, maybe play Comrie a couple of games more than you would have in the past. But we've also seen the storyline emerge down the stretch the last few seasons has been the backup goalies maybe not quite playing as much. I mean, Comrie got UFA 6 because he didn't play enough like a few seasons ago. Brossoit was going to leave no matter what last season, but he didn't play enough to qualify to get his name on the Jennings.
Right.
Right.
When the Jets were in a comfortable position, really, at that point in time.
Yeah. And so you look at that and you think, well, both seasons left with a taste of, I guess those guys could have played a little bit more, because in the playoffs, what ended up happening, right? 5-game losses both times. And we saw the year that everything sucked when Maurice quit and Lowry came in. They just had to play Hellebuyck every night because they were trying to make the playoffs, right? And that's what happened there. And he just, when you play a goalie that much, the track record has been they get burned out. And Connor Hellebuyck's an amazing goalie, but no one can seem to escape that. So I think, Comrie playing 10 times and hasn't won in a while because no one scores when he plays is a tough thing for him. But I think if Comrie can get 10 more starts this year, and you say, how many games do they have left? 36. If 36. Connor gets 26 and Comrie gets 10, or maybe 24-12, honestly, would be something nice. I think that's pretty ambitious because Hellebuyck's just going to play, right? He's always a big workhorse. I don't know if the Jets are going to go away from it, but I think they should try to. And again, if it's clear they're going to be first with like 10 games to go, then Comrie plays 5 of the last 10 or 6 of the last 10, right? But I'm not sure that's going to be the case because Colorado's coming, Dallas is going to be coming. I think the Wild are going to drop off a bit because they're banged up, and I don't think they were supposed to be this good to begin with. But let's see. But I think it's better if they can find more starts for Comrie, for sure.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. And I think, like you said, Christian, this year's different, obviously because of the Four Nations tournament, but because the Jets are where they are in the standings, right? So if the Jets have first place in the Central locked up with 6 or 7 games left, right, then Comrie probably gets another 2 starts that he wouldn't have otherwise got, right? So it's hard to predict, but I think we all agree that Hellebuyck's going to play a lot of these games coming up. I think, what was the percentage, guys, we had? He's played 77% of the games. I think it might be even a little bit higher. It might even be closer to 80% of the games so far. But I agree, Christian, just last point, I do think it would be beneficial for Comrie to get some more starts as the season winds down. And I wanted to ask you about Cole Perfetti, because obviously a big focus as of late with Nemesnikov out has been the Lowry line, right? And the chemistry Lowry, Ehlers, and Iafallo have had. But I really like the look of that third line, right? Rasmus Kupari, Nino Niederreiter, and Cole Perfetti. Obviously, Perfetti had a couple assists against Vancouver. My question for you is, when Nemesnikov's back, when Appleton's back, factoring in that the Jets, there's a good chance they're going to acquire a 2C, where does Perfetti slot in ideally for you? Because obviously he's a top 6 talent. And, we were talking about the OHL earlier, with the Owen Sound Platers and Owen Sound Attack. Obviously, Perfetti played for Saginaw, but his OHL numbers are absolutely ridiculous. So we know that he has a very high offensive ceiling. But where is he where is he ideally in the Jets lineup for you?
Well, I think when you do the domino effect of these guys coming back and you look around, the only spot for Perfetti is the second line, or not in the lineup, I think, because you look at what their ideal third line is, and again, it's Niederreiter, Lowry, and I think IFL is better than Appleton in that spot, but they've shown a liking for Appleton there. And then you look at the fourth line, what that means there, and is it Domestikov and Barron and Appleton, or Barron and Iafallo? You have a bunch of dudes, right? Whether it's Gustafsson or whether it's Kupari that can go in there, or they'd be in the press box. And then you have the second line. Well, it's going to have to be Perfetti then, because that's where he's going to be at his best, right? He's not a shutdown guy. He deserves to play more than fourth line minutes. The question has been the last couple of years down the stretch, his offense has gone away a bit. And this year's no exception, right? He doesn't have a lot of points in a little while. He's got a lot of no-point games. But I think this team needs, we said it before the season, this team needs a step from Cole Perfetti this year. They need him to elevate where he's at in his career. And have we seen that? At times, yes, but
Not consistently.
So, no, not really. So I do think it's the second line, because if you bring in, I'm curious to see, if you bring in a guy, I don't know who it is. I haven't really explored the trade market yet. We're still a while away from that happening.
Let's get crazy, Christian, and say Ryan O'Reilly.
Sure. Get crazy and say Ryan O'Reilly. Insert dude here comes in. Does that elevate Cole Perfetti's play in a way that it did when they had their best ever trade deadline acquisition, Paul Stastny, back in 2018, and the way he elevated the games of two young players in Nikolai Ehlers and Patrick Laine, right? Ehlers is still part of that equation, and now you got Perfetti as the young guy in that grouping, right? Because that line became amazing. Though Ehlers in the playoffs, it just went bye-bye. But I do think that it has to be the second line, and you're hoping that he can elevate too. Part of it is who you're playing with, right? And I do think playing with Domestikov has hurt Ehlers and Perfetti at 5-on-5 offensively. I think, analytically, they have some decent numbers in creation, but in terms of the goals, they're just not there. And I think Domestikov's a part of that, but I still think he's got value on your team. It's not the second line center role. So very curious to see if something happens when you bring a guy in, if that can help Perfetti get his game a little more unlocked, and what that means trickling down the lineup. But we're still, a month and a half at least away from seeing what that might be, unless they do what they did last year and weeks early they went out and got Sean Monahan. If they can do that again this year with someone.
Well, Christian, what about a local kid that they could acquire? He has some Stanley Cup pedigree. And no, I'm just curious, because we haven't really talked about it on this show. We did a little
talking about Cody Eakin, Christian.
Yes, Cody Eakin.
Oh, yes.
No, Jonathan Taves. I mean,
2020 big acquisition.
Yeah, the instant regret acquisition that was. But no, in terms of Jonathan Taves, I mean, there's been a lot. Yeah, there's been a lot of conversation in terms of whether he's going to come back and where he would end up. But from your perspective, adding someone like that with that type of pedigree, if he's capable of playing, do you see that as someone who is a potential add at not second line center, but fourth line center, to bring in that, like I said, that pedigree and that experience potentially to a Jets roster that is absent, really that sort of deep playoff run experience?
Well, the thing about Jonathan Taves, it's a fun conversation, but it's such an unknown, right? And there's a risk for sure, but in terms of leadership and pedigree and the storyline of him playing in his hometown, I think that'd be cool. Can he play hockey? No one knows if he can play hockey, right?
Small detail.
He hasn't played a couple of years, and when he did play, he wasn't good, and he was sick, right?
Do we know if he's back from India yet?
I think so.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, he's back. He's back, and he's probably in good shape, right? But
yeah,
he's also old, right? So I don't. But for NHL purposes, I just it's a nice idea. I think if the Jets sucked, it'd be more likely to happen. Kind of look, Jonathan Taves, distract from the fact that we're not very good this year. But I can't see it happening, honestly. And I don't know if anyone's going to sign him this year.
I can't
really
either.
I don't think they will.
It's kind of a pipe dream.
I think, I think if anyone, I can see him getting. I don't know. Maybe he's beyond a PTO in the fall. Maybe he actually signs a deal somewhere. But I think GMs are going to be very reticent to sign a guy who hasn't played for a couple of years without seeing him actually play hockey.
Especially like how, let's say hypothetically, any team that signs him, especially here in Winnipeg, though, where he's the local boy and everything else. Right. What happens if all of a sudden he's struggling and you've signed him and it's a playoff stretch run. He's not the easiest guy to go healthy scratch and send him to the press box. Just based on the pedigree and reputation and everything else. So it seems like it's more as beneficial as it might be with the pedigree and in the dressing room and blah, blah, blah. This is a pretty good room. I'm not too worried about the lack of, Stanley Cups in the room. I think that gets a little bit overrated and overblown.
Got to get Matt Hendricks in there.
Yeah, bring back Hendricks for a 7th round pick. I think, after they're trying to sort of salvage that season. Was that the year against the Blues where they flamed out, I think?
Yeah, I think so.
It doesn't remember. I don't remember.
It doesn't matter.
Together. But
it didn't have the impact they hoped it would.
Well, yeah. They didn't. Yeah, you can thank Blake for that one, but that's a separate issue entirely. It just the Taves argument just doesn't logically. I think there's too many red flags associated with it than there are necessarily net benefits. This is not a guy. To your point about nobody knows if he can actually play hockey at the level necessary for
Drew,
a playoff
he hasn't played
run.
in 2 full seasons.
That's my point.
And he hasn't been good in like 5. So the thing is,
like that.
The ultimate thing is this. If he was from Calgary and not Winnipeg, would we be talking about this? Probably not.
No.
So that's reason enough to say, if we're just going to sign this guy because he's from here, probably not the right reason to sign a guy. Unless, again, your team sucks and you're looking for some kind of thing to get the fans in the building, which the Jets are very good, and that's not a problem for them.
Right, and you're not acquiring him to be your 2C. Like in theory, again, I don't think this is going to be. It's fun to talk about Christian, but I think if you're signing him, most likely you're signing him to be your 4th line center. Yeah. And the Jets have a bunch of guys that can play 4th line.
They already have too many dudes down there. Right?
Exactly,
they got like 6 4th liners. So
exactly.
Christian, tonight the final game of the homestand against the Calgary Flames. We know the homestand started slowly. It's obviously improved in the back half of it. Just sort of, maybe, we don't often see a team stay at home for 8 consecutive games. So this has been a bit of an anomaly. What have your sort of, overarching takeaways been from this 8-game homestand, or 7 leading into tonight's 8th game?
Well, I think it's been interesting to follow the arc of it, right? Because at the start of it, they were gassed. And I think we saw that the first few games of this homestand. Losing to Anaheim was a weird one. Probably shouldn't lose to Anaheim, but also the Ducks are frisky and aren't, they're not actually a harder out than you think they'd be. The LA game, it's tough to play the Kings, and when you've got your backup in net. I like the fight of that game, but again, you got to score goals. The Detroit game was a bad one, right? And I think that was the game where everyone looked at them and said, "Oh, they're tired." And that's when they did the whole, "Hey, we're not going to skate till we play Nashville on Tuesday." Yeah. And what have they done since playing Nashville on Tuesday? They've been playing pretty good, except for that Kings game, right? So I think, they start out a little bit tired, and it seems like whenever the Jets have a couple of games that aren't very good, we're just like, oh, they're tired. But they also lose hockey games. Like, teams lose hockey games. The best teams lose a bunch of hockey games every year. So I think what they've done after that 2-day rest, where they've got three wins and an overtime loss in that time frame, or 4 wins and an overtime loss in that time frame, has been really positive, right? Able to win different ways. Colorado, just like full check down domination. That was really good. Canucks just beat a living hell out of a team with no soul. Like, the Canucks are just dying on the side of the road right now. And they went home, and what do? They sucked against the Kings, and the Kings were good. But man, something's got to give in Vancouver.
That's what we said. You give up 3 first period goals against the Jets at the end of the road trip. Then you go home in the first period. You give up 3 first period goals on home ice to the LA Kings.
Just terrible.
And Christian, the craziest thing is they're actually still in the playoff race.
Yeah, well, because it's a giant mid-off for the 8th seed. Yeah. And then you got this Kraken team that they're not very good, but they're kind of hard to play against sometimes. And whenever the Jets play them, it's always a close game. And guess what? They find a way to win because Dylan DeMello scored, right? So I think you look at a team that's finding different ways to win hockey games. You have to be impressed by that. You have to be impressed by, oh, God, they just had a 3-game losing streak, and then they go 4-0-1. And so they really save that after a bit of a, that 2-day break. They didn't just stay at home the whole time, right? But they didn't skate for 2 days. That seems to have worked. And having more time between games has worked too, right? And so I'm looking to see tonight against the Calgary team that's, fine, like a little bit better than we thought they'd be, but certainly they've come back down to earth a bit. They did not have a good game in St. Louis the other night. So looking to see what they can do on the road here in Winnipeg. I think the Jets want to finish on a high note, but Yeah, I think you have to be impressed with what the Jets have been able to do, because that Detroit game looked rough. Losing to Anaheim wasn't great, but they didn't let a 3-game skid fester at all and have gone 4-1 since then. So all in all, right, there's been one game in this 7-game homestand in which they haven't had at least a point. That's pretty successful, I'd say.
Yep. 680 CJOB Power 97 will have the call of tonight's Jets Calgary Flames game. The pregame show starts 4:00. Am I right?
Yep.
There you go. 4:00. You can tune in for the pregame show with our friends at CJOB. Christian Amell, thank you so much for joining us. Always appreciate your time and your insight on a Saturday morning here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
My pleasure, gentlemen. Have a good day.
We
You too,
look forward to
Christian.
seeing
Thanks
the New Jersey next time you join us here, because that's always an exciting feature here when you join
Won't be a
us.
Vikings jersey. Put a lot of those away last week.
I know.
Great
You know what?
sadness.
But you know what? You talk about the Vikings. I have the Sads over it too. But if the beginning of the regular season, anyone would have told you they'd go 14-3, you would have said, "Sign me up for that ride, regardless of."
I
What
would have
happens in
said,
the
you know
playoffs."
what? That sounds like playoff sadness is about to happen.
Yes, but the regular season was so much fun. I've adopted a new philosophy when it comes to the Vikings. Ultimately, I know I'm going to be let down, but I'm going to enjoy the highs when they come our way, because the lows will be so crushing.
I have trouble getting there, because it's like, I know, so we've hijacked the show here, and I know it's like, oh, this is great, but at some point I'm going to get kicked in the balls and it's going to suck.
Yeah.
And it took forever, and then Detroit and St. Louis, or Detroit and the Rams happened, and yeah, the kick happened, and here we are without a
But just,
left win
but
again.
boys, remember, it could be worse. You could be Jim Toth and you could be a Bears fan.
That's true. He's got a very
Yeah.
valid point there.
Yeah.
It could
Yeah.
be
But
worse.
but Jim Toth gets to do the Super Bowl shuffle.
Yeah,
That was
the-
1985, Dave. That was literally 40 years ago. Jim hasn't done anything resembling a Super Bowl shuffle in a long, long time. Christian, thank you.
Thanks,
There
Christian.
he goes. Christian Amell, 680 CJLB, joining us this morning here on the Illegal Curve.
Eric Comrie and net, according to Weber.
Well, let's talk about that when we come back. So,
Ooh.
Mitchell Clinton fooled me once. Shame on
Ooh.
shame on you. Fool me twice. Shame on me. We'll talk about the Jets goaltending situation and the forward group when we come back on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
We want to thank you for not betting with Play Now and choosing our illegal gambling site instead.
Because we couldn't afford things like this without your money.
So much of your money.
Now, you might have questions like,
Do our profits benefit your community?
No.
Or bet with Play Now, Manitoba's local legal and secure gambling site.
Dining, entertainment, parking, and convenience, all in one spot. City Place is located in the heart of downtown Winnipeg, attached to the Canada Life Center. Whether you're working, living, or out for a night in the downtown, make City Place your go-to destination before or after the fun finds you. Lunchtime, game time, anytime, visit City Place at 333 St. Mary Avenue, next to Canada Life Center. Holt Dental, the new official dentist of Illegal Curve, has a philosophy rooted in two unyielding principles: genuinely caring about patients and providing outstanding service. Being a patient of Holt Dental means more than just checkups and treatments. It's taking the time to listen and talk to each patient so they can achieve the best long-term health, functionality, and aesthetics for their teeth, mouth, and gums. Conveniently located at Grant Park Festival on Taylor Avenue, Holt Dental is dentistry of the highest quality in a comfortable and relaxed environment. For more information, visit holtdental.ca. Oh, and there's plenty of free parking at the front door, too. Celebrating its 40th year as Winnipeg's home for stand-up comedy, Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club has recently been named Canada's top comedy club and a top 5 comedy club in North America. From birthday parties to date nights to fundraisers and everything in between, Rumors is your destination for the best and most affordable live entertainment Winnipeg has to offer. For more information on upcoming shows, Rumors' incredible promotions, and to purchase tickets, visit rumorscomedyclub.com.
This
This January at Boston Pizza, every day is Pasta Tuesday. That means BP's famous pastas start at just $11.99 every single day. Create your own or go gourmet for just a few bucks more. Come on in for Pasta Tuesday pricing any day. Only this January at Boston Pizza.
Hour number 2 of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show starts now. Drew Mandel, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg with you at the bottom of the hour. Frankie Corrado, you know him from the intermissions on the Jets on TSN broadcasts. Good friend of the program. He's going to join us to talk about the Winnipeg Jets. That's coming up in about 25 minutes time.
He also played in the NHL, Drew.
Well, yes, I know that, and everyone knows that as well. But for most of the audience is more.
I'm bugging you. I'm bugging you.
Why do I even respond to you? Is the real good question. Big thanks to our friends at Rumors Comedy Club for their continued support of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Happy 50th birthday to our buddy Mike McIntyre. I had the pleasure yesterday of seeing Mike. He celebrated his 50th birthday as part of the birthday club with our friends at Rumors Comedy Club. So it was great to see Mike, and got to see our buddy Jay Bell, and got to see Scotty Billick and a whole bunch of the rest of the McIntyre crew. So that was a lot of fun.
Free Press Mafia, right?
The Free Press Mafia, exactly. But they behave themselves. It's almost like they're a bunch of reporters, and people were worried that they might report on the reporters. But it didn't happen. They were all well behaved and everything else. Earlier in the show, it seemed, based on our buddy Mitchell Clinton's commentary, that Connor Hellebuck was starting his going through his usual starting routine. But like he was fooled recently, it appears as though he may have been fooled again, as it appears as though Eric Comrie was indeed the first goalie off the ice. So it looks like it's going to be Comrie in net for the Jets tonight, as we sort of alluded to at the beginning of the show. And then maybe we had a little bit of a slight curveball, and then the curveball went back the other way. So it does appear as though it's going to be Comrie tonight against the Calgary Flames on Hockey Day in Canada, the Jets and the Flames. I'm so used to the Jets and the Ottawa Senators playing the afternoon game on Hockey Day in Canada that it's sort of weird that the Jets are getting one of the more marquee time slots with that 6 o'clock slot, as opposed to the 2 o'clock Hockey Day in Canada slot that the Senators have, I think, against the Bruins this afternoon, if I'm not mistaken. In any event, let's talk a little bit about the forward group. We've talked about it on Tuesday during that special live on location broadcast at the lunch hour at City Place, and that was a lot of fun. Reminder that on Wednesday this week, we're going to be at Boston Pizza on Taylor Avenue. More details to come with that. The Illegal Curve watch party, live on location post-game show. We'll talk about that throughout the course of the next hour. But the forward groups, with Lowry up playing with Nikolai Ehlers and Alex Iafallo, it really does seem that it's almost freed up and unshackled Nikolai Ehlers a little bit, because he doesn't have to worry about feeding or playing off of equally creative players. Instead, he's playing with two guys who are basically north-south, dirty work kind of guys. And Lowry, as a result, seems like he's really sort of been rejuvenated with this move, Ezzy.
Yeah, and I think we should enjoy this, guys, because I don't think you're going to see this line, in perpetuity. And
why not? Why not? Let me stop you right there. So admittedly, it's only been 3 games, but their Corsi 4 is 61.9%.
No, I know the numbers, Drew. I know the numbers. The numbers are good. It's just,
right.
Look, I mean, we've talked about this for the last several weeks. I mean, the Jets need for a number 2 center, and Adam Lowry is not that guy. He doesn't provide enough offense to be a 2C. I think he's doing a nice job filling in right now with Nikolai Ehlers and Alex Iafallo, but I still think the Jets need a second-line center. You're an improvement at that position. Again, I'm not taking anything away from Adam Lowry. Anybody who listens to the show knows Adam Lowry, not only is he the captain, but this is a guy who does everything for the Jets, right? He kills penalties. He fights when he needs to. He's physical. I mean, like, everybody knows Adam Lowry's importance to this team, but I'm just saying, I think we should enjoy this line, because it's not a line, I think, like, again, I could be wrong, but I think that once Nemesnikov and Appleton come back, I wouldn't be surprised if you're going to see, the reuniting of Ehlers, Perfetti, and Nemesnikov in the short term, even though, although we expect the Jets to acquire a second-line center. But if you want to talk about this line, yeah, Drew, I mean, look, Ehlers is obviously the most talented forward on this line, and there's a convergence of different styles, right? I think that's what you're talking about. And I think, again, the results speak for themselves, But again, I just don't think that if the question is, do you think this is the Jets' second line? Like, if you're opening a first round playoff series, is this your second line? I just don't think you have enough offense if you're talking about going against the elite teams in the NHL.
Dave, I mean, what about it? I mean, we've seen the Jets try and go and acquire that second line center,
Mm-hmm.
and he was great, power play wise. He certainly aided a power play that was, frankly terrible up until his acquisition. But 5-on-5, I don't know that he had necessarily the same level of impact, and clearly it resulted in the Jets, being down in 5 games. So that wasn't great to begin with in the playoffs last year. So maybe do the Jets reconsider their approach with with Adam Lowry up playing with Ehlers now, maybe spread out a little bit of the offense in the second, third, and fourth line, just instead of sort of loading up a second line and having to pay the big price to acquire a bona fide second line center.
Yeah, I mean, I understand what you're suggesting, but I still think, like I'm with Ezzy, I don't think that Adam Lowry is your best suited second line center. And maybe we see a few more games of this and you start to see that it's sustainable and they can produce. But ultimately, you're comfortable having him in that shutdown role with the occasional requirement to contribute, right, Ezzy? Especially shorthanded, whatever it's going to be. But to me, I still think that the Jets' second line center is that conundrum. It's that piece that they're missing. And like I said, that Nikolai Ehlers can be a driver. That insert name here can be potentially, if you acquire one, would be a driver. And then Cole Perfetti is that complementary piece that the drivers make that facilitates those two drivers on the line. Right now, Alex Iafallo and Lowry and Ehlers are performing admirably. And like I said, I just don't know that when you look at it if you were talking to me and you said, Dave, what does the Jets Stanley Cup center depth look like? And I say to you, Mark Scheifele, Adam Lowry, Rasmus Kupari, and Vlad Nemesnikov or David Gustafsson, that doesn't do it for me. So that's the problem. So but if you said to me, is the Jets Stanley Cup depth, Mark Scheifele, insert name here, Adam Lowry,
Brock Nelson,
Vlad Nemesnikov, well, whoever, Ezzy, if it is. But my point is, that is a different conversation we're having. And I think that's a much more, remember, you don't know, you could have an injury. So, I mean, like the problem is right now that depth, those guys can fill in. Like I said, Gustafsson is doing an admirable job. Kupari has stepped up and is becoming more noticeable. But ultimately, at the end of the day, we're not talking about a team that you want to say, okay, well, we're a good competing team. You want a team that could be a Stanley Cup contender. And remember, this is the year we're talking about, boys. There are no clear, you look at Vegas, they're very good, but there's no clear team that is standing heads and tails above everybody else. There are a lot of very good teams, of which the Winnipeg Jets are one of them. But to me, I still think you need to acquire a 2C and just in terms of having a guy who's going to be that driver alongside Nikolai Ehlers, and where Cole Perfetti will be a complementary piece.
Well, and that's why, Drew, I said, I think we should enjoy, I mean that literally, sure. I really do think we should be enjoying the success. As Drew mentioned, I cut him off, but Drew mentioned the advanced stats. The advanced stats have been fantastic for Lowry, Ehlers, and Iafallo. So I think we should be enjoying the fact that Nemesnikov goes out with an injury, and that the second line's been better with Lowry on that line and with Perfetti on the third line with Nito and Rasmus Kupari. And I think, this, and we asked Christian Amell about this last segment. That's why I think it begs the question, once Nemesnikov and Appleton are back in the lineup, what is the perfect permutations for these forward lines, right? And I think, Alex Iafallo deserves, I think, an elevated role in this lineup. That's what stood out to me. Does that mean that, Appleton's on your fourth line? Possibly. Does that mean, and again, I think Rasmus Kupari has played really well, and he's shown really nicely as that third line center, right? So these are all good things, guys. But I think it ultimately comes back to, if you went out and acquired Sean Monahan last year with Vlad Nemesnikov as your second line center, what has really changed this year, right? And I think, Drew, that's what it ultimately comes back to. I'm not dismissing, obviously, we're spending significant amount of time talking about it today. I'm agreeing, and the numbers don't lie. The Lowry, Iafallo, Ehlers line has been fantastic. I just think 3 or 4 games, you can't then extrapolate that and say, well, that's going to be the second line for the rest of the season going into the playoffs. But I do think what it's done is it's shown maybe that the Jets have the ability to not necessarily go back to Nemesnikov, Lowry, and Perfetti. Maybe, Nemesnikov, Ehlers, and Perfetti.
Right.
Maybe that means that, when Nemesnikov comes back, I mean, he's like, the only problem is if you're keeping Iafallo up on that top line, and then Appleton comes back and Nemesnikov, like then most likely a guy like David Gustafsson is coming out of the lineup, but that's probably going to happen regardless. But
right.
I think what it's shown us is that the Jets have the ability to move players up and down the lineup and still win games. I think that's ultimately my macro level kind of analysis, is that, the Jets, it's really a testament to the Jets forward depth guys that they can lose Nemesnikov and Appleton and actually play better without them.
To me, what it's done is it's maybe changed the trade deadline calculus a little bit from my perspective. Because, for the longest time, I would agree, huge hole. They need a second line center and everything else. To me, I still think they need a center. So, I mean, now I don't, if you can go out and get Brock Nelson and the cost of acquisition is reasonable, sure. I mean, I'm not saying don't do that by any stretch of the imagination. But to me, it's putting more of a priority on improving the back end than necessarily the forward group up front.
Yep.
That would be where I would spend most of my assets. Let's assume that the Jets are going to go out and make a number of moves. We saw they made 3 moves at the deadline or deadline-ish time frame last year: Monahan, Toffoli, and Colin Miller. Obviously, I think if you had to rank those 3 in terms of expected significance, it was Monahan, then Toffoli, then Miller.
Yep.
To me, given the flexibility that this Adam Lowry, Nikolai Ehlers, Alex Iafallo experiment has maybe generated, I moved the defensive acquisition. That should be your most significant one. That should be your most impactful move at the deadline. Not to say you don't go out and get a center as well, but maybe it doesn't have to be that surefire second line center. Maybe it can be a more of a tweener center who can play third line. I'm thinking of a guy just off the top of my head, a guy like Yanni Gourde out of Seattle, a guy who's a pending UFA, who isn't obviously a second line center, probably better suits as a third line center, even maybe a fourth line center. But you don't have to spend huge assets to get your center anymore. Rather, I would spend those assets to get your defender.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I think it's a good point, Drew. And I think, to your point, we saw what happened when Dylan Sandberg was out for a significant amount of time. It really threw everything off, and we saw the lack of depth on the left. I hate to just say lack of depth, because the Jets had, Logan Stanley and
impactful players.
Exactly. It's not lack of depth. It's the lack of the type of defending and the type of offense you need from your second pairing defenseman, right? So it's that idea that, again, using a guy like Marcus Pettersson, again, we don't know if any of these players are actually options for the Jets, but we're just throwing out them as examples. Marcus Pettersson is a guy that, if he needs to move up to a second pairing role, well, he's done that with the Pittsburgh Penguins, right? Hayden Fleury is not a good option in your top 4. Third pair, fine. If he's playing 12 or 15 minutes, fine. But we've seen, like, at this point in his career, we know what Hayden Fleury is at 27, 28 years old. He's been a journeyman defenseman. So the idea is that you're augmenting your top 6 group. And so I think you've got a point there, Drew. Like, look, at the end of the day, Dave has said this so many times. You have to have a top 9 that's producing, not just a top 6, a top 9 that's producing. And for too many games this year, Nemesnikov, Perfetti, and Ehlers haven't produced. Right. And again, I'm a big fan of Cole Perfetti. I always mention this because I'm not getting on the negative train here with Cole Perfetti. I do think Cole Perfetti has, I've said this, what have I said before? 60 to 70 point potential. Maybe that's a little bit high. Some people, don't see that. But I think if you bring in the right second line center, like Dave M has said time and time again, let's see. Like Vlad Nemesnikov has done everything that you've asked out of him, but he's just done, he's limited offensively. So let's see if you can bring in someone, and then let's see what Cole Perfetti can do with that player. And that's why I do think there's a good chance the Jets are going to acquire a center before whenever the trade deadline is. What is it, March 7th, whatever it is.
Yeah, something right around that time frame. I mean, to me, though, Dave, I think Ezzy makes a good point. Just that you lose one injury. Right now, the Jets, if they were to lose one forward, they lost Nemesnikov. They were able to plug and play and stabilize.
Sure.
Now you lose one of the top guys on the top line. Maybe it's not the same situation. No question about that. But
they have the depth, is what you're saying.
Well, that's a good point, though, Drew, because if you go into the playoffs and Mark Scheifele gets injured, God forbid,
but that's the
and
same
Vlad
for every
Nemesnikov
team.
is sure.
Yeah, I was going to say, so same thing for the Oilers.
Nathan
McDavid,
McKinnon,
Draisaitl,
Connor McDavid. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You lose your best guy, you're SOL. There's no second best guy.
We've already we've seen that already. Josh Morrissey goes down in the playoffs. Mark Scheifele goes down. I mean, look what happens to the Jets. I mean, we've seen it already, right? So it's not. We don't have to speculate. We've saw it right in the bubble. What happened in the bubble?
Calgary. Yeah. Right. I mean, so you're right. It's an impossible situation to replace superstars come playoff time. And you're not going to have a guy, in the cupboard, break glass in case of emergency, because that's just not how the league works. But the defensive depth, we've seen what happened. There's not an obvious fill in. When Dylan Sandberg went out, the Jets were able to keep their heads above water, because they're a good team and they got exceptional goaltending and they have the best power play in the league right now. But, you saw Hayden Fleury struggle in that role because that's not a good role for him. You saw Neil Pionk struggle in that role. So to me, again, that's why it changes the priority. You need to have somebody on your back end. We look at Vegas. Vegas is probably, I would say,
best group of defensemen in the league, as far as I'm concerned.
Exactly. So they have guys who can step up and bump up in case of injury come playoff time or when the games are more serious. The Jets don't have that right now, and that's why they need to, I think, shore up particularly that third pair left side so that if somebody gets injured in the above them, they can move a guy up. That's why, to me, the calculus has changed, especially because of the Lowry performance with Steelers.
So you're saying you want your expectation is it's got to be a left side D that they're acquiring to bolster that group as opposed to the right side.
I look. I mean, I would prefer a left side D.
Yeah.
Because I think that's where they're weaker on the third pair. Colin Miller, I have more confidence in Colin Miller than
Who looks like, by the way, he's going to be getting back into the lineup.
Right, back in the lineup, likely with Logan Stanley. So everyone take a deep breath. It's not our fault. We don't make these decisions. But, I have more confidence in Colin Miller than I do in, Ville Heinola, Logan Stanley, and Hayden Fleury at this point in time.
Okay, so, and like I said, and I know folks don't like this, but really, like I said, I do believe that the Stanley Heinola experiment, this ride is really to give the Jets organization an opportunity to see what they've got with these guys playing consistently, or not. In Heinola's situation, he's not playing as consistently. But like I said, they're giving Stanley that runway. He's played a lot of games other than when he's been injured, right? I think I saw somewhere he has not been a healthy scratch yet this season. He's only been out because of injury. And so, yeah, I mean, again, like I said, we know what we've seen. We've talked about it enough. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I think the Jets organization wants to be able to say, here, we're evaluating it based on, this sample size of games in a row. And this is what we're going to need to do. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, remember, this Jets team doesn't love losing players to the waivers, which, of course, I know we've talked about. But if you're
the defenders they lose on the waivers recently.
Well, did you see Johnny Kovacevic's numbers right now with the New Jersey Devils? And they're talking about trying to get him signed to an extension. That was one I was preaching for 5 years.
Love to see it.
Yeah, but again, for the record, not only that, but he's made their second overall pick from when was what's his name picked?
Nemec.
Yeah, no, I know who it was, but I'm saying when was he? Was it which draft?
2020, I believe.
2020, yeah, whatever, 2022.
22, I think.
But I think he's pushed him down, right, Ezzy? So I mean, I'm not this isn't devil's lunch, but my point is that the Jets organization
might be for Ginsburg, to be honest.
Yeah, that's true.
Nemec was second overall in 2022. Drew's right. And sorry, Dave, I just wanted to quickly get in here because I see a lot of chatter about Isaac Phillips. And obviously, Dave, you've watched Isaac Phillips play a little bit more in the AHL than I have, a lot more in the AHL than I have.
21 times he's played against the Manitoba Moose.
Well, so obviously the Jets Jets organization has had time to scout him, right?
Yeah.
But obviously, guys, that's more of a minor league move. I'm not saying that Isaac Phillips is not a guy like I some people were texting me like, what does this mean for Ville Heinola? Like, I really don't think. I think Isaac Phillips is a guy that the Moose organization needed to bolster their depth, and this is a situation where you're trading one defenseman for another, and you're hoping that you're going to get, obviously he's a big guy, he's more physical, right? Than Kuzman, right, Dave, who's more of like an offensive minded defenseman. Yeah. So I just wanted to get that in there. I don't think that Isaac Phillips is like, you should expect him to be coming into the Jets lineup and playing the majority of games.
No, you wouldn't. But I would say that he does give them an option now where they didn't have that option with the Moose before. If they needed to go that deep, right? If you don't have Fleury, if you don't have Heinola, if you don't have Stanley, then you really don't have much because, the rest of the guys down with the Moose really were either AHL guys or young prospects like a Dmitry Kuzmin. Now he's of course going to head to the Chicago organization and play with what's his name, Lyubushkin, the second overall pick or third overall pick of the Hawks.
They're both Belarusian, right?
Yeah, they are. They're buddies. So there's going to be a little bit of connectivity with those guys. Isaac Phillips, again, 56 NHL games, of course, with the Blackhawks organization. So, the Blackhawks not exactly a top team, but the fact of the matter is he's a big guy, can skate, and like I said, he seems like a good guy. Seems like he's excited to play here in Winnipeg. And so I wouldn't suggest that you're looking at him and saying, oh, well, this is your augmentation. No. I just think I'm just simply saying, but if you can pucker your face through all you want, but at the end of the day,
I think it's a good move. You get organizational depth for
right,
a guy.
But that's my whole point.
That was a good pucker. Games. That wasn't Drew's bad pucker face. That was Drew's good pucker
right,
face.
But what I'm saying is that you can not like it and say, but at the end of the day, if you have to go down there, which we were talking about with all of these guys in, remember last year we didn't have this conversation once. The only time defensemen weren't in the lineup is if they were ill. Not because anybody got injured, sorry. This year, almost every guy on that blue line has been injured at some point. So the fact of the matter is they've had to kind of look organizationally and they're saying, okay, well, look, we've got on the right side, we've got someone we can call up. On the left side, we don't. Now they say on both sides, okay, if we need to, we can make a recall. That's all I'm saying.
No. I think it was a smart move. But at no point in time is Isaac Phillips going to be one of the answers to the
no. Of course not. Of course
problems.
Not. No, of course not.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a smart move. You get a guy who's played NHL games for your organization, at the expense of a guy who may or may not play NHL games, period. It's a move you probably make more often than not. So I don't have a problem with the move, but anybody who is expecting him to, if he gets a game for the Winnipeg Jets, it might be game 82 after the Jets have clinched a playoff spot and everything else. That's
and like I said, and getting back to the idea of the conversation again, we're revisiting this idea of the perfect trade deadline acquisition. I'm with Ez. Like, we're not any different. We're not talking about a different team. This is the same team, practically the same team from a points perspective as last year. Of course, there's some numbers that are better with Connor Hellebuck, but ultimately, this is a team that you still look at that 2C and you have a question mark. So to me, I look at it and I think if you want to be a Stanley Cup contender, if you want to get to that next level, you need that Scheifele and a second line center that's got some sort of cachet, baby. And that right now is not what they've got.
Time will tell. It'll be a topic of conversation for the next 5, 6, 7 weeks as the trade deadline approaches and the Winnipeg Jets remain in a firm playoff spot, currently atop the Western Conference. With
to be a fly on Chevy's wall right now, boys. I mean, you got to think that he's an active guy right now because obviously all the trades, we don't expect those to happen. Probably starting in it'll become really active and kind of like. It's also interesting because when it usually gets really busy is when the Four Nations tournament is going to be going on, right? I don't think
there's a roster freeze. I mean, I'm just trying to think. Last year, obviously, there were moves made during the All-Star break. That's when a lot of the trades began. That's when the Jets just about acquired Monahan. So I don't believe there's any sort of roster freeze when the Four Nations Cup goes on. And I'm sure that all the general managers will be in Montreal and Boston for the tournament, quite possibly filling up the seats in the arena because they're not getting sold to fans. But when you put all these general managers in a close enough vicinity, that's when things begin to occur and conversations begin to be had and phones begin to ring and things begin to percolate. So,
I don't think anybody playing in the Four Nations tournament is going to be traded.
No, I don't think any of those guys are going to be traded.
It would be pretty funny if that did happen.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. I agree with you there, Ezzy, but I think that things will be heating up very quickly. Things are going to heat up very quickly here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show as Frankie Corrado. You know him from TSN, the Jets on TSN broadcast. He's going to join us for more Jets talk. Drew Mandel, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg. It's Saturday morning. Don't go anywhere. The Illegal Curve Hockey Show continues. Welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Drew Mandel, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg with you. Reminder, after tonight's Jets-Flames game, right around 8:45 or so, we're turning the reins over to Mr. Ginsburg, who'll be joined by Connor Harabchuk for the Illegal Curve post-game show. May God have mercy on us all for that decision, but we're looking forward to Ezzy and Connor driving the bus on the post-game show a little bit later on tonight. Pleased to welcome back to the program from TSN. You see him on the Jets on TSN broadcasts. Our good friend Frankie Corrado joins us on the program. Frankie, good morning. How are things?
All good here. What's going on? It's nice to be back. It's been a little while, but nice to be talking to you guys.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks for making the time this morning to join us to talk about the Winnipeg Jets. You certainly keep a close eye on them in your duties with TSN and joining Sarah and Dan on a lot of the Jets on TSN broadcasts. I guess, Frankie, just as of late, this Winnipeg Jets team continues to be a bit of a truck. They're tops in the Western Conference. Connor Hellebuyck is otherworldly. Just sort of maybe an overarching sentiment of what you see from the Winnipeg Jets in your observations when you watch them, prior as part of your duties with TSN.
The first thing that comes to mind is they can win games that they wouldn't necessarily win last year. You know what I mean? Like if they get into the special teams game, the power play can overpower other teams. They can play a little more of a back and forth. Not that they want to, but you know what I mean? Like if they need to open it up and find a little more offense, they can do that. So like they're more equipped to win some games that maybe last year it's like, man, if we can't get over that 3-goal hump, it's we have to keep them down to 2 or 1, and so that's a big difference. And with that, I think you become a more adaptable group. So you find there's different moments where different momentum swings happen, and it's like you can persevere and push through that. So that's the first thing that comes to mind. I guess the other thing is everything felt like it was slotted perfectly for the Jets, right? Like the first line was going to be the way it is, and you're not going to touch that. The second line left a little to be desired as far as the production from Nemesnikov and Perfetti, but Nick Ehlers had been unbelievable. But you weren't going to touch it because lines 3 and 4 worked really well together. So you'll say, let's see how things work from there. And now with Nemesnikov going out and Adam Lowry having to play second-line center out of necessity, it's almost like that adaptability that they have as a team, you can now put that towards your lineup decisions because now you feel like you don't have to just stay rigid, in what you were trying to do with all these lines because it works if you have to move guys around. And so you don't have to be afraid of messing with the word I'll use is ecosystem. You don't have to feel afraid of messing with the ecosystem of the team. So I think, they win more games that they would have lost last year or in the past, and it's a more adaptable group, which is a great sign.
So, Frankie, along those lines, Vlad Nemesnikov, Mason Appleton, they're both on the verge of returning to the lineup. Health for the full health for the Jets seems as though it's quite on the horizon. What do you do with those forward lines after the top line when Nemesnikov is back healthy? Do you go back to Nemesnikov, Perfetti, and Ehlers? Or do you think that the Jets have maybe found something with the Lowry moving up to play with Ehlers and Iafallo situation?
I think Lowry with Ehlers and Iafallo is interesting for me because, and Kevin Sawyer talked about this on the broadcast, like I don't think Lowry gets enough credit for how fast he is. Like we think of him as big, strong, good matchup guy, but like he can really scoot. So with that being said, you can put him with a guy like Ehlers because he's not going to fall off the pace. And I think with the trade deadline coming up, and what are we? Is it 6 weeks or so? Maybe a little bit more. You probably want to see, okay, give it a little runway like this. So now you can really pinpoint what exactly it is you need to add to this group because the group itself has earned the addition of some help leading into the playoff run. Like you don't want to leave them hanging or high and dry. So it's probably got to be a forward that comes in. But now if Lowry works for you in the second line spot, and if you put Nemesnikov in the third line spot, like at worst, Nemesnikov is going to buzz around the ice. Like he's going to be fast, you know what I mean? He's not going to be Lowry, but he can give you that element of speed in your middle six still. It's just not with Ehlers and Iafallo. So I kind of think like those two guys will come into the lineup, but I don't think I'm touching the top 6 the way it is right now. Like, I'd be pretty content to see how that looks for the next little while.
Frankie, I've been wanting to ask you about Dylan Samberg, because obviously here in Winnipeg, I mean, his absence was really felt after blocking that shot from Steven Stamkos. He's been back for, I'm pretty sure it's 4 games now. It might be 5 games, but I'm pretty sure it's 4 games he's been back. And obviously the Jets have won their last 3 games, outscoring the opposition 11-2. And as a former defenseman, that's why I've been wanting to ask you about this. Like, what stands out to you about Dylan Samberg? Because he's obviously not a guy, nobody's expecting him to score 20 goals or 50 points or anything like that. But the reason why I like him so much is he just does his job so well. He's just such a solid defensive defenseman. So what's kind of stood out to you since he's been back in the lineup?
Yeah, it's funny. Like, guys like that just seem to munch minutes and make it look easy. Like, he never really does anything that's out of the realm of what his game should be. And that's, like, I always found that hard as a defenseman, because I'm like, hey, I'm feeling really good and my game's in a great place. Let me add a little bit more. Maybe I haven't had a point in a while. You know what I mean? But he just kind of, it's like he always does what's appropriate for the game. And I don't know if he gets enough credit for his ability to handle the puck. Maybe he does, but like he handles the puck pretty well. He's efficient with it. So I'm always impressed by him. At the end of the game, you'll sit back and say, I didn't notice him for like flashy things, but boy, was he effective. And where the Jets, you know, when they didn't have him, it wasn't a true top 4. You know what I mean? So now, like, he comes back into the lineup. It's a true top 4. He plays that efficient style of game where he's not looking to do anything that he really shouldn't do. And it's a nice compliment to Neil Pionk, because he can be, you know, he's up and down the ice a lot. Like, he's involved in the play a lot. So it's just, I think it's just the fact that he doesn't get bored just doing what the game calls for and not trying to do too much with it. It's a pretty efficient game.
You know, Frank, I'm curious about your perception as a guy who's been in the room when there are additions made, because this is the group that, these are the horses you rode to get to this point. This is the guys who got you to be a first place team. But, you know, one of the things you said in an earlier answer is you said, you know, the team deserves to add. And, you know, Kevin Cheveldayoff has talked about that idea of like, they've done enough to, you know, deserve to kind of get that augmentation. But from a perspective of those players in the room, if you're one of those guys who now is going to get pushed out, I know hockey's a team game, but how is that kind of delicate balancing act of, you know, wanting to make ads, but also recognizing that this is a team game that has gotten to this point?
It's a good point, right? It also depends who you're pushing out and who you're pushing down. Like, you can bring someone in and all of a sudden things are slotted much better for your group. And as a team, like, that's fine. Hey, the guy that gets pushed out or pushed down, he might, you know, he might not love that at first, but as a group, you'll kind of work through that. Like, these trade deadline acquisitions, they're so interesting because you don't want to disrupt things. Like, you don't want to bring in the big fish that all of a sudden has to be on the first power play or has to be on the first line, unless you really need that. But I would make the argument that, you know, if you really needed that, your team's not in a place to win a championship anyways, right? Like, so for me, the Jets would fall into the category of some kind of purposeful middle 6 forward. You know, if it could be a centerman, that would be great. But I think now if you're going to give Lowry a little runway at the second line spot, like Dregs reported it on the broadcast, it's like it might not have to be a centerman. So that opens up your search a little bit more. And so now you can kind of hone in on who's going to come into the lineup that slots us better, but doesn't disrupt, you know, the chemistry that we have in the top 6, or you know, someone that doesn't have to be on the first power play unit per se. And the team needs a defenseman. Like, they absolutely need another defenseman, someone who's going to play in on the third pair probably. So that, I think, you know, helps kind of slot things better, because now you might not be asking too much of Heinola or Stanley, or, you know, when Miller comes back, depending how you want to deploy him. But yeah, like, it's a fine balance, but if it's the right purpose and the right fit, it doesn't get much attention other than, hey, you know, so-and-so who's on the fourth line, he's not playing as much now, but hey, we got to be about our business, and we got to try and win here.
Frankie Corrado, our guest Saturday morning on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. You know Frankie from his work with TSN, a regular on the Jets on TSN broadcasts as well. Frankie, when you're a defender and you your team takes a penalty and you see the Jets league leading power play come over the boards, what's your mindset? You know how good they've been. They've been 50% success rate over the last, 4 games on home ice, over 30% on the year. What's your mindset as a defender trying to mitigate that kind of power play?
So I think the first thing that comes to mind is let's not let these guys get set up, right? Like, let's win a face-off, let's get it down the ice, and let's see if we can disrupt their entries enough so that maybe we can get that first unit off the ice. But even the second unit comes on for Winnipeg, they do their fair share of scoring as well. That's the first thing. And then I guess, there's 2 different schools of thought, and it depends on who your coach is. There's the school where it's like, we're going to be uber aggressive, and we're going to make sure that if they beat us, they're going to beat us being aggressive, and we're not going to let them off the hook. Then there's the other school of thought where it's like, let's let them have the puck on the outside, but any kind of threat on the inside. So if it's the Jets, I'm thinking if it's the Ehlers in the bumper or the Velarde down low, we're just going to maybe try and let them blast from the outside and pick up the rebound and clear it out. Regardless, the Jets' power play has shown that it has multiple different attack angles. And so if you want to sit on one, there's another one waiting to go. And I just like the fact that it's been, it doesn't hang out on the outside and kill time. It's like it moves a couple times, boom, it's to the net, and then we reload it. And, that's whether it's going to be Scheifele or Connor or Ehlers or from the top. It's just there's an emphasis on making sure that it's getting delivered quick and getting, kind of that process starts over again. So that's hard to defend just because there's so many different avenues that they could bring it to the net with. And we've seen a lot of teams kind of fall victim to that where, you see teams sit on the bumper and Velarde has a great look in the front of the net. Or, they want to sit on Velarde because they're afraid that it could go backdoor to Connor. Well, that's opened up Ehlers, so it's just there's a lot of different ways that they can kind of jam it to the net, and that makes it pretty dangerous and hard to defend.
Yeah, Frank, Frankie, I would love to. Hopefully, I can call you both because I know Sarah was a little bit confused on the broadcast. I'm pretty sure it's like my nickname's Ezzy, right? Like my real name's Ezra, but like I'm pretty sure Frank is okay with Frankie. He uses it quite a bit, right? So, but I just wanted to check just to be sure. But when you're talking about the Jets, there's obviously a lot to talk about. But you obviously cover the Montreal Canadiens as well, and I have to ask you about them because they're 8-1-1 in their last 10 games. And they're, I think, only 1 point out of a wild card spot right now. Like, what stood out to you? Because I think, like, obviously we focus on the Jets here on this show, but, like, this is just an incredible story because I don't think anybody, whether or not they make the playoffs, it's just incredible the run that they're on right now.
Yeah, and you know what? I would say it's not by accident, right? Like, they got embarrassed. There was a Thursday in December. I think it was December 17th, maybe. They got embarrassed on home ice. They let in 6 goals in the third period to Pittsburgh. And that was, there was fans booing and a lot of the talk was, listen, we can handle a rebuild, but we can't handle efforts like that. And basically since then, they've completely turned things around and, they've, after the Christmas break, they've beat Florida, Tampa, Vegas, Colorado, Washington, Dallas, all on the road. Like and a lot of those games, and they were not a great road team for a long time. And a lot of those games, like they outplayed the opponents, like they outplayed the Panthers. They outplayed Vegas for a lot of that game. They really hung in there against Colorado. They just outplayed Dallas the other night, outchanced them. Okay, so what's happening as a team? They've become a 4-line team. Adding Laine and adding Alex Carrier on the back end has been massive for that group. Like significant upgrades that have made them a 4-line team. And for a while, like I know we've talked, I haven't talked with you, but I'm sure you guys have talked about the Jets' 4th line and how good that 4th line has been at times this year. Not taking anything away from them, but the Canadians had the best 4th line in hockey going for, at least a 4 or 5 week stretch. Now, Emil Heineman got hit by the car crossing the street in Utah, and actually the car's totaled because Heineman just hits so hard. But like so they turned into this 4-line team all of a sudden. They had a viable shutdown pair with Goulet and Carrier, and the star players were playing their best hockey. And Marty St. Louis always talks to us about this, after morning skate and stuff. He's like, I want to be able to throw any line on the ice and know that I can come at teams, wave after wave. And so he's been able to do that. And early in the year, when they were the worst defensive team in the NHL, like by far and away the worst defensive team, it was like one mistake, grade A chance, potentially a goal. Now they've worked at this defensive zone enough, and they've been exposed enough that they know how to add layers, similar to what you see in Winnipeg all the time, right? Like someone might get beat, but there's another blue jersey right there. They've implemented that, and they've become a much more buttoned up defensive team. And so, it's generally not just one thing. Like I didn't even mention the goaltending. The goaltending's been really good. This new kid, Jakub Dobish, is kind of the talk of the town. He's 4-0, and he's beat some really good teams. So it's not just one thing. It's a lot of things for them, and it's pretty exciting. Like I kind of think they're in it for the long haul here when it comes to this Eastern Conference playoff hunt.
Randy, last one for you, but just in terms of this, getting it back to the Jets, in terms of this, the focus of this group, it just seems like they are laser focused. We're seeing Connor Hellebuck at another level, which is almost impressive given the fact that he's a 2-time Vezina winner and he's putting that guy to shame. Are you looking at this team, seeing this motivated team, Mark Scheifele, the Four Nations snub, of course, what he's doing as a result, Kyle Connor, it seems to be at another level. Are you just seeing a team that maybe is a little bit pissed off, a little chip on their shoulder, the fraud comments last year from whoever that was? The fact of the matter is that, they went out the way they did. Are you just seeing a different motivated team this year than we did even last year?
Yeah, I think you could say that motivation or even maturity as a group, which doesn't happen overnight, right? So, and ultimately, the Jets fall into the category of a few other teams that are going to be judged on their playoff success, right? Like as much as it's looked great in the regular season, if you were just an outsider who looked at the standings every day, you're like, I've seen this song and dance before. You know what I mean? Like Hellebuck standing on his head. Jets are a good defensive team. They're near the top or at the top of the Central Division. Like, hey, wake me up in April when this team gets into the playoffs. That's what an outsider, if you haven't watched them on a night-to-night basis, will say, and they won't be far off. Like, it does look different this year, though. The power play is so much better than it was last year. They score way more than they did last year. And so it does have a different look, but ultimately, if you talk about that motivation has to be there in April when, if you win game one, and teams throw something at you to, they make their adjustment. It's like, well, now you got to make yours, and you got to persevere through that. And Hellebuck, like Connor Hellebuck, is unbelievable. Like the best goalie in the NHL, not one of the best. But come April, he's going to have to steal a game. Like that's, you know what I mean? Like those are the conversations everyone's going to be having around the Jets. But watching them now makes you feel a little more comfortable that can happen come April time. And the motivation, the maturity as a group, whatever you want to call it, the secret sauce that they have, that's gotta be present come first round of the playoffs, because, it's 2 years in a row now where you win game one and you fizzle out. And that can't be the case this time around.
Call him Frank. Call him Frankie. I'll call him a great guest here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Frankie Corrado, TSN, thanks so much for joining us this morning. I really appreciate your time and your insight. We'll see you again on a Jets broadcast soon, and we look forward to welcoming you back to the program as well.
Thank you guys so much. It's a pleasure, and we'll talk soon.
Take care, Frankie. Thanks so much, buddy. Take care. Have a great Saturday. Always a great guest, great catching up with him, great insight into the Winnipeg Jets. That's Frankie Corrado joining us here on the program. In case you missed any of that, in case you missed Christian O'Mell earlier, in case you missed any of the show, the YouTube version, the immediate replay, that'll be available as soon as we end the broadcast.
In case you missed our conversation about salami on lasagna, Drew, to me, that was like YouTube gold there.
That was the essence of Illegal Curve in a nutshell, about if we can somehow take a conversation about palindromes and make it a conversation about lasagna and how to make lasagna more unhealthy. That's us in a nutshell right there. So,
I was actually thinking about making a lasagna this weekend.
Really? Have you ever made a lasagna before?
I have made a lasagna before.
Okay. Yeah. It's not difficult, so I think you could do it.
Yeah.
I think that's
all about the layers.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
all about the layers, and the problem is
Not that I've
you know,
ever made a
guys,
lasagna
Usually,
before.
after I make the
Yeah.
lasagna,
Dave, you have a full kitchen. You've never cooked in once.
Well, let's be realistic. I've never
no,
eaten
Drew,
a
Dave
lasagna,
cooked
let
for me
alone.
once. Dave cooked a nice meal for me once. We had a nice dinner. Actually, no, I think we ordered out.
I was
Actually,
going to
now
say,
that
I'm
I
pretty
think
sure I
about it.
ordered that in as, but okay.
Dave, you can make a vegetarian lasagna. It doesn't have to have meat in it.
I know, but I don't like lasagna.
Doesn't
I've
like
never had
lasagna.
another admission. I've never had lasagna in my life.
You've never had lasagna in your life.
Dave, I'll make you a nice kosher
Nah,
lasagna.
don't like the way it looks.
Hey,
Not
Joe
for
from
me.
Winnipeg, you know.
Yeah, I know, I'm probably insulting
come
Joe.
on, somebody's got to be able to help Dave out here.
Look, nobody eats more pizza than me, so I'm doing my part. I just don't.
I need
don't
Joe's
like lasagna.
recipe. I bet Joe's got a great recipe for a nice lasagna.
I would hope so. Somebody help Dave out and get the poor guy a lasagna. Show him what he's been missing out on. Let
Not for
him
me.
have something other than pizza. For every day of his life. He eats like a
I
child.
usually put ground beef in it, but my kids aren't a big fan, so I'm going to go with the veggie lasagna.
Okay, well there you go. That's something that you can enjoy. Then look
You like
forward to that.
spinach, by the way? Are we a spinach fan of in lasagna?
I'm not a big spinach fan. I prefer sort of adding the ricotta, and then you add the mozzarella.
Ooh,
and
yeah,
you
the
add,
ricotta. Yeah,
sometimes
now
you
you're
can
talking,
do-
Drew.
You can do some ground veal instead of some ground beef. That adds a little bit of an extra dimension to your lasagna if you really want to step up your A game. Again, it's beauty in the eye of the beholder. Dave just doesn't have any of the beauty yet, so he doesn't know what he's beholding. So that's something we have to work on when it comes to Dave and his lasagna consumption. Scott Arneal was asked about the Jets' defense, and he said that they have 8 healthy defensemen for tonight's game. All 8 are available, is the quote, courtesy of our buddy Mitchell Clinton. Presumably, I'm expecting it to be Logan Stanley and Colin Miller, given that Heinola and Fleury stayed longer on the ice during the optional skate. Time will tell on that front. It does appear to be Eric Comrie in net for the Winnipeg Jets, though. So there's your sort of update from morning skate as it pertains to the Winnipeg Jets.
And we haven't really got into this, guys, but if I'm not mistaken, once Nemesnikov and Appleton are back, are the Jets not going to have to waive a player?
No, they'll put Toninato back down to
Toninato.
the Moose. He's
Okay.
He'll
Right,
just
'cause
be loaned back.
Right. Okay. So the Jets won't, because what I was thinking was if they had to, then you're probably talking about
No,
forward would probably be.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not going to be waiving. I mean, I guess Logan Stanley's an
they're
option, but I
they're
don't-
at 20. They're at 22, and then they'll
right,
they'll
because
send
Toninato doesn't require waivers.
Right, not yet. So
Right. That's a
they're
good point. I
fine.
forgot about that.
Yeah, so they'll send him down, and then they're fine.
Yeah, exactly right. So no, that won't be the roster crunch isn't.
There's only in fact, Nemestikov isn't even on IR. It's just Appleton who's.
How about this, guys? I can't remember the last time the Jets were completely healthy.
Well, neither can Scott Arneal, which is what he told us 2 days ago when he said, I can't recall the last time he did say it was day 1 of training camp when they had 8 healthy defensemen.
Yeah, so obviously that health is back to being in the case for the Jets. You hope for Eric Comrie's sake that they get some offensive support behind him. The guy, has obviously in the
Is Comrie starting? I honestly forgot who was starting.
Yes,
I'm so confused.
It's Comrie. I mean, unless they really pull another changeup, unless they're trying to torture Mitchell Clinton, which I don't know why the organization would be torturing him, it is going to be Eric Comrie for the Winnipeg Jets tonight. So you hope that they get some offense behind him at this point in time, because it has been so long since the Jets gave him any run support, as the baseball expression goes, that when you're relying on your backup goalie to not give up more than 1 goal a game, maybe 2 goals a game, then it's an uphill climb. So the Jets, I'm expecting a solid performance tonight. As of late, the performances have been that. The end of the road trip, the top power play against a bad penalty kill, all the signs.
End of the road
should
trip
be-
for the Flames, but yeah, we know what you were saying.
End of
Drew,
the
and-
homestand. Sorry.
Yeah,
There
no,
you go.
we knew what you were saying, and the thing is, like Calgary. Let's be honest, guys. The big issue with them this year has been they can't score goals, right? And so, I mean, we're not. This is not a team that you're expecting to blow the lights out here in Winnipeg. We talked about the penalty kill is atrocious. They take a lot of penalties. We talked about it, guys like Rasmus Anderson, Martin Pospisil. They've got a lot of guys that take a lot of penalties.
Yeah.
So obviously, that's going to be a bad mistake if they can avoid that and get the Jets power play going. As we talked about, it's been 50% over the last 4 home games. But the Flames are coming in having lost 2 games in a row to the St. Louis Blues. So obviously you're expecting them to be a surly bunch. I'm expecting it to be kind of a similar game to be honest with you, as last game. Like, I'm not expecting this to be like a 6-5 shootout or anything like this. I'm expecting this to be a pretty tightly contested game, maybe a 3-2 game, something like that. I'm not going to do a Ginsburg guarantee.
7-2 Jets.
Maybe 4-2. I'm going to go 4. This is going to be my prediction. 4-2 Jets with an empty netter.
Well, the Jets, I mean, the Flames are a decent possession team, but they're a perimeter team. They don't get into the high danger areas very often or very easily, which, is something that the Winnipeg Jets are obviously very good at preventing. So, I mean, again, that's sort of something to keep an eye on. The Flames might control the puck a fair bit. They're right sort of next to the Jets when it comes to, I think, their possession numbers. But when it comes to the high danger chances, they are far below the Winnipeg Jets, which speaks to, of course, the fact that they have trouble keeping the puck, putting the puck in the net, and they're not as great, not as good defensively as the Winnipeg Jets have been so far this year. Quickly, before we wrap up the program, the Manitoba Moose were in action last night. Not a lot of goals to discuss, but Dave M will give us the latest in this favorite segment of the week.
Put on your antlers. It's time for the Minute Moose Minute on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
Well, I was doing color in the broadcast booth with Daniel Fink yesterday, which is great on one hand. It's fun to do, but it also means that I don't do a great recap. I didn't even get one up on illegalcurve.com. But that's mostly because the Moose made a couple of errors as he in the game ended up in the back of the net, not for lack of effort from Kaapo Kähkönen, who was excellent in the hockey game. He only gave up 2 goals against. There was an empty net goal for a third goal to the Marlies, allow the Marlies to win it 3-0. But he was excellent. Matt Murray from Thunder Bay, he was excellent in that. I made him the first star. I gave Kaapo Kähkönen the second star. And actually, Jacob
Look at you, Dave, picking those stars.
I know. And Jacob Quinlan, if you remember, the Quinnipiac star who got the game-winning goal in the NCAA Frozen Four, and was rumored after his college career was done, was that he was going to come to the Jets development camp, and he never ended up doing that, and then eventually signed with the Toronto Maple Leafs. But he was also excellent. He had a goal and an assist for the Marlies, but the Moose just didn't have it going on. But we did get a chance to see, of course, Isaac Phillips, who we mentioned earlier in the show. He was traded for the super nice guy, 6'3". He is a left shot defenseman, like we talked about, 56 NHL games under his belt. So he was paired alongside Dylan Coghlan. The kid line just didn't have it in yesterday's game. Brad Lambert, Nikita Chibrikov, and Chaz Lucius, they had some chances, but overall were not particularly good. Brad Lambert coming back off of 3 days of illness, though, so he missed the last 3 games, 3 games that cost him the last 3 games of that road trip. But their point streak ends at 5 games because they went 4-0-1 on the road. They'll look to rebound. They're practicing this morning right now, actually, in about 1 minute's time out at Hockey for All Center, and they'll be back on the ice tomorrow at 2:00. I don't think we have any tickets left for that. So we do have for the Grand Rapids series coming up next weekend if you want to go. So send me a message. But yeah, the Moose fell. It wasn't the best game, good crowd on hand. I should mention, Ezzy, and you I'm sure are aware, it's Manitoba junior hockey weekend, minor hockey weekend, not junior hockey, minor hockey weekend, celebrating minor hockey. So it's pretty awesome. A lot of kids in jerseys yesterday, and supporting it all throughout the arena. So that was kind of fun. But yeah, the Moose, of course, played a little bit of a dud last night. So they'll look to rebound tomorrow afternoon, 2:00 against the same Marlies. And of course, as he wouldn't be an IC broadcast without mentioning 2024 6-rounder Kieran Walton. He scored for Sudbury yesterday, his 70th point of the season in 41 games. Crazy. He has 27 goals, 43 assists. He is tied for third, I should say, in OHL points race. And he's at a 1.66 points per game, which is, I think he was, I don't remember what he was at last year, but he's about a point, 1 point ahead of where he was last year. So his numbers this year have been off the charts, and he's been a real joy for Jets fans to watch develop, because he's been excellent for the Sudbury Wolves, although they did fall yesterday. And looking over at the Western Hockey League, Braden Yager, he had 2 assists for Lethbridge.
Well, just to keep it going, one more thing. This isn't a Ginsburg Western Hockey League minute here, but Connor Zary, who of course is from neighboring Saskatchewan, he's not in the lineup right now. I'm not sure if you guys saw the Neon Knee collision. Yeah. But Zary was 4th on the Flames in scoring, having a good year, 10 goals on the season. So you would think that a lot of the Zary family would be making that trip to Winnipeg. It's possible that they still are, even though he's not playing. but Zeri's going to be out of the lineup. So unfortunate. We talked about it. The Flames guys, after Jonathan Huberdeau and Nazem Kadri, there's not a lot of offense on the Flames. So Connor Zary, who former Kamloops Blazer, not sure if I mentioned that. Dave was talking about the WHL. So unfortunate. Even though he's having a great year, he's going to be out of the lineup. Hopefully, he's going to be back sooner rather than later. But just another guy the Flames, would love to have in the lineup because can't mention it enough. This team does not score a lot. So good news for the Jets and Eric Comrie, though.
Well, Ezzy will talk about it all later on tonight on the Illegal Curve post-game show after the Jets and the Flames, right around 8:45 p.m. Mr. Ginsburg, Mr. Connor Harabchuk will bring you the latest of tonight's action, analysis, commentary, post-game comments, the whole 9 yards. So be sure to join them tonight later on for the Illegal Curve post-game show back here on the YouTube channel. Reminder, on Wednesday night, we are at Boston Pizza on Taylor Avenue. The marquee will say I see on Wednesday night. Join us for the Jets and the Colorado Avalanche.
Drew's pasta plate will say I see.
I'm looking forward to Joe's lasagna recipe, which I won't eat.
So join us Wednesday night, Illegal Curve watch party, live on location post-game show. Boston Pizza on Taylor Avenue. We're looking forward to that. If you haven't already done so tonight, smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, subscribe to the podcast, leave us feedback, tell your friends, tell your family the best place to be on Saturday mornings. And after each and every Winnipeg Jets game is, of course, the Illegal Curve YouTube channel.
Okay, that I think that comment, Dave, put that comment back up there.
Oh,
that's pretty good. Drew, do you want to read it for the podcast listeners?
Question: what do you call a day without snow in Winnipeg? Answer: a shovel day off. That's actually pretty clever. I just saw that. Era Steele is the username of the person who put that up and joined the chat with that. So Era, well done, or Era Steele, well done. You get some salutes from us for a very clever play on words.
We'll get Era Steele some Play Now socks, Dave.
Yeah, to wrap up today's
have to come on Wednesday to the watch party at Boston Pizza then.
There you go. Big thanks to all of you in the chat. You always make it fun. Big thanks to everybody who tuned in. Big thanks to our sponsors. They make the Saturday show, the post-game show, the website a possibility. That's our friends at Play Now, Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club, Holt Dental, Boston Pizza, City Place, and Seagram's. Support these fine businesses because of their continued support of Illegal Curve Hockey. We'll see everybody later on tonight for the post-game show. Until then, have a great rest of your Saturday. For Dave Minuk, for Ezra Ginsburg, I'm your host, Drew Mandel. If it's Saturday, it's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
Thanks for listening to this broadcast from Illegal Curve Hockey. For more great Illegal Curve content, subscribe to the Illegal Curve YouTube channel, follow at Illegal Curve on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and visit your online home for hockey in Winnipeg, illegalcurve.com.